the presentation for RFP 23-24449, ATMS software and hardware, ATC hardware. My name is Sharon Spellman, and I'm the procurement analyst for this project. Active participation today will be by the committee members and the presentation team only. For the record, all presentations will be recorded, and the recordings will be available after all presentations and the public meeting have concluded. Please be advised that the cone of silence is still in effect and shall end 5 business days after the county posts its notice of intent to award or on the date the solicitation is canceled by the county. The schedule will be as follows: presentations 60 minutes, questions 25 minutes, break 15 minutes, demonstrations 70 minutes, and questions 30 minutes. All questions, comments, and concerns must be directed to my attention and my attention only. All phones and computers must be on mute. And once the presentation team introduces themselves, we'll have you go off camera just so we can save some bandwidth. But at this time, I'd like to have each committee member introduce themselves and any other county employees in the room, starting with the chairperson, William Johnson.
William Johnson, Traffic Management.
Julie Scanlon, Traffic Operations.
Brian Sias, Traffic Management.
Patrick Mosley, Cybersecurity. Bob Kenwood, Public Works. Brian Dickhart, Procurement Services.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Q3. Please feel free to introduce yourselves and begin your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to come in and present today. I'm going to introduce our team in a moment here, but first, Q3 and our partner, CT Control Technologies here in Florida. We're providing our solution for the county. Q3, we're a global ITS company. We have 20 years in ATMS experience in controllers, and we have Control Technologies who have over 40 years of providing service, hardware, and service here in the Florida area. Today, we have myself, Steve Magrum, the EVP of Urban Solutions, my partner, Whitney Nottage. She is our Principal Project Manager in charge. She's also an EVP of Operations and a PE at PTOE. And we have James. James is based here in Florida. He's our technical sales rep. He is also a IMSA Signals Level 3. Online, we have Eric Deason. He's the Regional Sales Manager for Florida. Mitch Terry, our Director of Software Operations. And Pete Gansey, the VP of Sales for Control Technologies. So our proposed solution today is Kinetic Mobility. Kinetic Mobility is the platform. Kinetic Signals is one of the modules within there. We also propose 2 additional ones as well. So we'll show you video and signs. We'll also quickly touch on our XN controllers with our MaxTime IC software. And with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation of the solution to Whitney.
Thank you.
Whitney, before you start, if you don't mind me saying, Hillsborough County, here in Hillsborough County, we don't have any DMS signs. So for the sake of, conserving time, or if you guys want to skip past that portion of it, feel free. Just wanted to put it out there and let you know.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to be doing the presentation portion of the demo today. You guys presented 6 questions to us. You've got a section for each of those questions, and we'll describe how our solution can serve those. The first question that you guys posed was to demonstrate how our software can improve the effectiveness and efficiency for your TMC operators who are working day to day to improve the safety and mobility for all of your road users. I'll be talking about both Kinetic, which is the central ATMS platform that we proposed, and MaxTime, which is the local controller software that we proposed. And we'll go through some workflow improvements that the software provides to make things easier, and some features that can be leveraged for those safety and mobility needs. So the first thing we'll talk about is Kinetic, the central system. And we mentioned there are no signs. I think it was like an option on there, so we did have that in here. But what you can see here is a screenshot of the Kinetic Mobility platform. It's a modern platform that was built to combine ITS devices and signal devices that are traditionally in very disparate systems into a single unified platform. So what you see here is a map that has cameras, signals, and signs, and you can see them all at the same time, control them at the same time. And this integrates other things that could help you with scalability into the future, like weather, event management, integrating CAD devices. There's a lot of options for expansion to help Hillsborough County grow into the future and expand their system. But by having a single unified system, no longer do you need to go to one place to view your cameras and then a totally separate place to work with your signals. You can do that all in here, including hand tilt zoom. Makes it really easy to monitor things. You can see that on the screenshot, we've got that lasso. So when an operator knows that there's an incident in an area, they can just kind of throw a lasso around that area, pull up all the devices that are inside of that lasso, do some monitoring. Makes it very easy for them to monitor situations and very efficient and effective to respond to them as well. Within Kinetic Signals, we have the scheduler, which is going to allow your operators to schedule events that are either planned and therefore scheduled in advance, or unplanned events, which would be something that you schedule to happen ASAP or for immediate effect. Within our scheduler, it's a calendar view, so the UI is super friendly and easy to use, and it's also an Outlook style calendar. So we're talking about efficiency, right? Your users are used to any kind of Outlook calendar. It's going to be very easy for them to open up that calendar, double click on it, add an event, choose some devices. And it also allows you to do several different types of commands. So that includes patterns, action sets, traffic responsive, sending a special function to activate a blank out sign, triggering a preemption or a stop time. All of that can be done within the scheduler. And it's a single scheduler, so you don't have to go one place to do a stop time or a preemption and then a totally separate place to configure your patterns. Makes those workflows really easy. And it has a configurable recurrence, so that will support holidays, events that you know are going to happen every year in July, like the 4th of July, where you probably have a lot of traffic heading to the beach and you want to have very specific patterns to go out there. You can have those events scheduled on a recurrence. We also support action sets. So I'll show action sets in detail on the next page. The action sets are great for planned events or expected but unplanned events, right? So your incidents that you might get on I-75 where you know you're going to have a flood of traffic onto your arterials and you need to push those cars through those arterials really quickly. Action sets are great for that. They take a combination of commands on a combination of devices and put them into a single command that you can schedule out. So that'll make it really easy. Instead of having to send a command for pattern X to this corridor, send a command for pattern Y to this corridor, all that's in an action set and you just send the action set. And then situational awareness, right? Once your operators have sent out these commands, they really need to see what's going on or what has been going on. And there's menus within the software to see what current commands are being applied to your devices, what commands have been applied to your devices in the past, and that's all filterable so they can really hone in on anything that they're trying to do. So let's talk about action sets in a little bit more detail. The screenshot on the right kind of shows what you guys are dealing with here in Hillsborough County. And we know that you're getting a lot of accidents with FHP coming off those freeways onto your arterials. So action sets are a really great tool to manage that. I also know that you guys have a lot of events maybe around the state fairgrounds that you need to deal with. Your action sets can help with those as well. So what we have on the left is a screenshot and it's got the I-75 incident flush plan, right? This is where you might want to send pattern number 25 to one group of intersections, pattern 15 to another group of intersections, and then maybe a special function that drives a blank out sign down to 3 specific intersections. This is something you pre-configure at the onset of your system. It's there forever and ever. And then when you need it, say an incident on I-75, you go to your schedule and all you need to do is trigger that I-75 incident flush plan action set, and it does all those commands for you in one. It's going to make it really, really easy for you guys to plan for and respond to both those planned or expected but unplanned events. Another thing that we have is traffic responsive. The traffic responsive is built into Kinetic. It does not have any additional license fees. So that is included in the software out of the box. And your traffic responsive is going to allow you to dynamically change your traffic patterns. So today you might have a set of patterns that are scheduled on a time of day basis. So your morning pattern is running from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, and your PM pattern is running from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the evening, or 4 to 7. But if you have a situation where sometimes that peak starts early, sometimes that peak goes long, and you want to be able to adjust to that, that's where traffic responsive comes in. So the software allows you to use any detector in the system. and configure volume and occupancy thresholds for those detectors that are assigned to a pattern. So if your AM flush pattern is ideal for inbound traffic, you can use those inbound detectors to set thresholds that will trigger those patterns. And what we've seen with several agencies is that this really does work. So if we look at Georgia Department of Transportation, they're a statewide customer of ours. They've got our local software and our central software deployed at 8,000 signals or so. And when they had traffic responsive at about 2,000 signals, and when COVID happened, they saw that the system automatically adjusted, sending patterns down at different times a day. Because the traffic patterns changed with COVID, right? And then when we came out of COVID and people started returning to work, that TR automatically adjusted, which obviously makes it efficient for your operators, because now they don't have to really do anything but monitor it and make sure it's doing what they expect it to do. And then we have robust data collection and reporting. One of the biggest tools you guys will probably use is being able to monitor what is going on or what has gone on in the past to see if it is operating effectively. The software collects all high resolution data at that 1/10 of a second granularity from every controller in the system. And it keeps it in that format. So it's not aggregating it into unusable formats or anything like that. You get all that high resolution data in its native format in the system. You can access that through some built-in reports that we have. We include all of Utah's ATSPM reports, or most of Utah's ATSPM reports, at no additional cost in the system. They're all in there. And then we have some custom ones like this one, which James will show you a little bit more in detail later. But this is one of my favorites as an engineer, because I can see exactly where I need more time and where I can take away some time from, right? And again, all that's built in. There's also a live time space diagram. And that live time space diagram is looking at what actually happened at your intersection. Actual splits, again, Jane will show this for the demo, and it's dynamic. You can drag the bars to try and adjust your green bands and send offset changes down to those controllers. It makes it really efficient to effectively change your signal timings on the fly while you're monitoring your system. Beyond the signal reports, there's also system reports that really help you. So the system includes operator change logs, communication reports, alarm logs, and every single log that is in the system, every single tabular log that's built into the system is totally filterable by any field within that table. So if you're needing to filter your high resolution data by event type, or your alarms by alarm type, finding all the flash alarms, there's quick, easy filters. You can save those filters to make it really fast to find the information that you need to find in the system. So now I'll talk about some specific features in the software that specifically help you with safety and mobility. We will start with promoting safety. So I'm going to talk about the local controller software, the central software, and then the architecture itself, and how our proposed solution helps with safety. So at the edge, max time, it's our locally based software. It's a bit different than probably what you guys are used to, because the local controller software does have a web UI built into the controller. What's great about that is you can access the controller software without needing your central system or needing custom software on your computer. So your technicians that got to work in the field with this controller are not confined to just that 8-line screen on the controller with that keypad, right? They can connect a laptop to it and pull up the web user interface and get access to all the functionality within the controller in a user-friendly web user interface, which James will also show a lot of this stuff you'll see in action when James does the demo. Within that software, there's a ton of safety features for bike and ped safety and vehicular safety, ensuring that you can serve all of your road users, not just the vehicles. So we have pretty robust FYA, flashing yellow arrow functionality, that allows you to, say, delay the flashing yellow arrow while the walk is active or for a fixed amount of time. We also allow you to do leading pedestrian intervals or advanced walk by time of day. So you could actually schedule that advanced walk. Maybe you only want the advanced walk to be happening while your schools are releasing, right? Allow those pedestrians to have a safe way to cross the street, but then still have the mobility during the non-school hours, right? To not have that pedestrian interval. And then we support bike min green. So in your multimodal corridors where you have a lot of bicycle volumes, you can use bicycle detection to have a longer min green for those bicyclists. On the vehicular side, we do support flashing yellow arrows and flashing red arrows. We also support a dynamic red extension where you can use a detector to extend the red by a certain amount, max reds. So quite a bit of safety features on the vehicle side as well. In the central software, it's mostly about situational awareness and responding to events, right? You want to find incidents quickly. You want to respond to them quickly so you can clear that traffic out as quick as possible. The longer that event is going on, the more unsafe it is for your road users, right? And so the situational awareness is really given to you by having that combined UI. If you know there's an incident going on in an area, you can use that lasso tool to pull up the signals and the cameras. So in that one view, you can validate that the event is happening on the cameras and then take action in your signals. And James will show that as well. And you can use the scheduler to schedule various events for future or immediate use. Question?
Just so we understanding, we're gonna try to integrate questions while you're doing the oral presentation, so we may
No
not
problem.
need that time at the end.
Sure.
So my first question is, does your system have some sort of event log for when an incident is notified, like, time of identification, time of changes and end of incident?
Yeah, that's in our events module, which was not included in the proposal, but it is built into the application if it was something that you wanted to look at adding. So what's built in is that you can see every timing change that you made, the date you made it, who made it, any comments they might have put. So maybe you made a timing change and put in a comment, incident, triggering max screens for some time or extending the split. There's also logs for whenever you are sending patterns, how long those patterns are active, things like that. If you have interest in more than that, the Kinetic Events module is a great tool. That can actually integrate with CAD feeds to automatically detect events. It also can integrate with Waze feeds to detect events automatically. It'll correlate them and provide you a confidence level. So if I see one Waze event, maybe I'm only like 2 out of 10 confident that that's actually an incident, right? But then if I also see CAD, the system will automatically correlate those and say, yeah, we're pretty darn sure there's an event here. And then you can create the event, and to your question, it will start a timer at that moment when the event was started. And within that menu, it also has responses, send commands down to controllers and post messages on signs, automatically zoom PTZ my camera into a certain preset. And when you close that event, it'll log the close, and that's all available in a log.
Excellent, and just to be clear, that was an optional bid item.
I don't think there was a place in the bid for us to actually put that, but it is an optional item that we do have in our application, yeah.
Got a few short questions also. I didn't want to interrupt you, but sometimes it's easier to bring it up while you're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
fine.
it, so we don't backtrack. One of the first things you mentioned was your camera integration, camera control. What's your vendor support list look like? Like, do you have just a few cameras or a broad scope of cameras?
It's pretty robust, as long as the camera can get us a WebRTC feed, which is typically possible out of your video distribution server, we can work with it.
RTC.
Yeah, Mitch, do you have like a number of cameras we've integrated with, protocols?
Yeah, I think MTCIP compliant cameras, pretty sure on VIP as well, those types of things. So pretty common stuff that you'll find in your industry for ITS devices.
Okay, that's a lot of box, nothing additional there.
If you choose the kinetic video option, yeah.
Also, that's a kinetic video option that you add. And what about the compression 264? You guys are doing 265, you know about that, the compression algorithm for the stream?
Mitch?
So I don't know if we're necessarily re-encoding it. So like, I believe that we can support H265 coming in for the video, but some of those finer details, we can get you questions and answers back on those though.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I have a couple more, but
Yeah, so you mentioned SCLC certification on the architecture. Was that done on all levels, like controller software, central software?
So the central application supports single sign-on. Let me jump back to that slide. I think that was where Yeah, and this part I haven't talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
So the central software, yes, supports Active Directory, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. This year, we are expanding that to the controller, where the central profiles that you generate that integrate with your Active Directory will also manage the profiles on the controller. So not today, but that is coming. However, I will say that right now, we are the only controller manufacturer who does currently support full user profiles on the controller. So you can configure as many user profiles locally on the controller as you want. And each of those profiles can have granular permissions granted to the users in terms of like down to the submenu of what they can access. And those profiles can be enforced both at the web UI and the front panel.
Go back to the action sets.
Sure.
So can an action set as a parent object contain a second action set as one of its children? So that you can have like one action set for these two intersections and then one for these two, but then put both of those inside with a third one, or do you have to start all over again, put all four devices in that one?
I think you need to do the latter. We do not have action sets as a target in our action sets.
That's a quicker, easier way to correlate. And as they start building groups and automations, it makes it easier to start breaking things down in the logical form like that.
Yeah,
And they were asking for that kind of stuff so that they could quickly make changes to certain things. So with the high res data that you're storing, you're saying that you have it in its native format and you have built-in form like reports you can run. Do you have like a backend that almost sort of works like a SQL database where you can search that data and parse it?
yes, everything's stored in a MongoDB database. Yep. And you can use most common reporting tools, Power BI, Jasper, to connect to that database. And we would provide a database schema as part of the deliverable that you can use to generate custom reports using whatever reporting tool you guys have in-house.
Just a lot of questions. Is the data associated to a graphical coordinate? So if we wanted to do like a layout with or interface or a graphical system, we could take the data and put it there.
It's usually associated with the device ID inside of the database.
My last question for now was about the mobile interface, which is web-based, browser-based. Do you have an actual mobile app or is it only strictly web-based?
Don't need a mobile app as long as you have any device with a Chromium browser.
So
We can launch it from a phone, from a tablet, as long as it's on the network of the device or the system, right? Launch a browser and any browser, and it scales very well up and down because it is built on.
mobile aware.
Yeah.
But it has to be on the same network as the device.
Yeah, so like if you're trying to get to max time, you would need to get on the same network as the controller, which you could do by connecting an Ethernet cable, or one of the things a lot of our customers do is they buy those Wi-Fi dongles on Amazon. Not to leave in the cabinet, that might be unsecure, right? But their technicians carry it around. When they get there, they plug it in and it pops up a Wi-Fi network. You can make it undiscoverable. So, and then just connect your computer to that Wi-Fi network and you can get to the device that way. For the central system, we did propose cloud-based for this, and we can make that public facing. Obviously, it's still locked down from the profile perspective, so someone can't log into it. We can also do a private cloud where it's secure, that UI is secured behind a VPN.
Okay, sounds good to me. I like the more secure methods personally, but I know that they want the ability to access things
Easily,
anywhere.
yeah.
So.
We can work with you on what's the best architecture there. Did you have something, Mitch?
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. Obviously, we do, if you do public facing, there's a lot of different SOC controls that are in place, like geofencing, so nothing outside the US, or you could take the approach of if you've got WAN addresses for specific, buildings or areas just for Hillsborough County, we can obviously whitelist just those IPs. So there's a lot of different
You can still make this single sign-on even if it's public facing or partially public
Yeah, we
facing.
can still support the single sign-on.
Yeah, the single sign-on integrates through, Active Directory or Azure AD, depending on what type of authentication provider you guys have. Pretty flexible.
Public face, it's not so bad as long as we have multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, multi-factor authentication and password complexity integrating with that Azure AD, all that is available.
That's all I have to know.
And since we're on that, so, safety isn't just about your road users and the people driving out there, it's also about your network, right? That needs to be secured. We do have a SOC 2 Type 2 attestation report for, if anyone in the room is not familiar with what that is, It's a nationally accepted standard for security best practices, right? And they audit companies who want to prove that they are following best practices for security. And this SOC attestation that we have is more than just, do we deploy our environment secure, right? They look at how we publish code. And we have tools in-house that scans the code that developers write before it even gets committed to the software to identify vulnerabilities. We scan our environments. It even goes down to how we operate as a business. How do we handle passwords inside of Q3? How do we run our HR? And we do have that attestation report. We get audited every year. So you can know that we're doing everything we can to protect your data.
One of your references that we checked responded that you guys have a SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2, is that correct?
Yeah, so type 1, the type 2 almost like overrides the type 1. The type 1 audits you at a single moment in time and says, yes, at this very moment, everything you're doing is right. The SOC 2 Type 2 takes it the next level. It looks at the last year, which is why we get audited every year, and make sure that we were continuing to follow those throughout the entirety of that period.
Understood.
We are pretty unique in that our central system does not communicate with our controller over NTCIP. If you're familiar with NTCIP, it uses SNMP v1. It's not hash, very insecure, right? But since we have that web browser on our controller, we also have a web API. So we communicate with our controller using WebSockets rather than NTCIP standard. And since we do that, you can also disable NTCIP on the controller. So that's not even an option for someone to connect to it over NTCIP. Keeps things really secure. You can restrict and secure all of your API connections. And then when we pull that high res data, we're doing that over secure FTP, not just FTP.
So that they're working on the new NCIP version based on SNMP v3. So when that happens, would you be able to integrate that into the communications?
We will, but we will update with SNMP v3 when we're actually already in the process of it. We don't want to wait for NTCIP because they say they're going to release at the end of this year, but they also said they're going to release at the end of last year. So, it's when it all happens. So we're just doing it. But that would really only apply if you chose our solution when you wanted other stuff to talk to our controller, right? Because we don't even use the NTCIP.
Well, that's a clarification too. So the NCIP, the idea was it is very low bandwidth. Now, we do have some intersections that are copper-based communications, and they're still giving us 50, 40K at best, 100K. Would that be an issue with the web communication that you
It's almost
use?
Ethernet over copper.
It is, but it's not, I mean, it's slow speed.
Usually what we suggest agencies do if they're having issues with that would be just to disable some things within the controller. For example, maybe you don't pull the controller. We support pub/sub instead of polling, right? So instead of most vendors out there, you're asking it once a second, what's going on. Instead, we subscribe to the objects we need. And we're only subscribing to the objects that we need at that moment. So when you're looking at the map, we need Main Street green, side street greens, right? That's the only thing we're subscribing to. If you click on an intersection, now we're pulling all of the device and we're only subscribing to those at that moment, right? So we only subscribe to the things we need in any moment. But if you're concerned with bandwidth, you can totally shut down the pub/sub model, switch to polling, and maybe poll once every 3 minutes. Right, so there's options.
We also have some intersections that are connected via LTE, and
It will always be,
there's also the
because there's some locations that are remote that we do need for diversion routes. But we're never gonna put fiber out there. It's 6 miles of fiber for 1 or 2 intersections.
Georgia Department of Transportation has cell modems at 5,000 of their 8,000 intersections. So it's something that we are very familiar with, and they throttle back their polling once every 3 minutes, not because it can't handle it, they don't want to pay for it.
Right.
The data is very expensive.
we are paying for it as a service, so we need to
Yeah.
again to.
But speed wise, not an issue. Like you mentioned, we've got several adaptive systems. Our adaptive is locally distributed, working off cell networks without any issue. All right, let's jump into mobility. We got, again, the controller, central, and your architecture. How can the applications themselves support mobility? MaxTime, the local controller software, has the fastest transition algorithm in the industry. So we've had independent parties do studies on that, and it transitions faster than any other controller. Why is that important? Pretty sure you guys have some railroad preemption around here. coming out of that can be quite a hassle to the mobility of the users, and you want to get back and forth quickly so you can move that traffic through. If the fastest transition algorithm in the industry is not enough for you, you could also just go for now. That is a function that you can select per pattern or per preempt. And that essentially says, I don't care what's going on. Well, I care what's going on, right? Safety, but outside of being like in the middle of a yellow or a red or a main green, stop what you're doing and go immediately. That's really handy for your flush patterns, right? I got to clear traffic that's coming off I-4 for an incident. That particular pattern is going to be a core now pattern. But an area where I know preemption is constantly causing traffic problems, make it a core exit. And then you get a lot of situational awareness in max time because of the fact that there is a web UI, right? A technician can see more than just one detector's status screen on that black and white 8-line screen that's on the controller, or one phase status screen. Pull up the computer, connect to the controller, and open multiple menus at one time. See a dashboard, which James will show you, of your phase status, your detector status, what the port cycles are doing, which makes it really easy for them to respond to things faster. There's also embedded reports on the controller, so you can see your phase terminations, maybe help troubleshoot detection issues from the application. And then there's some advanced features. Q responsive is one of my favorite ones and probably helpful for you guys. Q responsive is a locally based app feature in the MaxTime software, not centrally based. And it allows you to use detectors, either how long they've been on for, what their volume is, what their occupancy is, to do something in the controller. Trigger a pattern, add time to a phase, stuff like that. The biggest use case we've seen customers do that I think could help you guys is if you've got a ramp, an off ramp from I-75 that's always queuing onto the freeway, and then you have both a mobility issue and a safety issue, right? Probably some bad rear endings. You can put a Q detector on that ramp, and when that Q detector has been hit from on for a minute, it will automatically add time to that phase, and you determine how much time that is to try and flush the ramp out, right? And then there's a lot of user logic peer-to-peer that allows you to just say, what, if the thousands of features still don't get me what I need, the user logic allows you to access pretty much any parameter in the controller and do something with it. You can create your own feature with that user logic. In fact, in the early days of MaxTime, a lot of our features and functionalities were built by customers who created something with user logic and we're like, well, that's really cool. And we put it in MaxTime as a feature. At the central, we talked about the traffic responsive, being able to change traffic patterns based on the traffic conditions rather than by time of day, huge for mobility. We strongly encourage customers to try to use traffic responsive where their peaks are regularly the same type of traffic patterns, right? So you know you got a really good pattern that services this condition, but sometimes it starts an hour early, sometimes it lasts an hour longer. Use that traffic responsive. You can schedule those commands in the future or immediately with recurrence, and you can do it with a ton of different commands, not just patterns and action sets. And then those action sets, we already talked about how helpful those are for mobility. Architecturally, we're going to be able to support mobility because we have options for you to support your regional, and I know that's the next question, so we'll dig into that in detail a little bit later. But in addition, we've got an API, it's a GraphQL API. Most modern applications and vendors that we've talked to love developing and integrating with a GraphQL API rather than the legacy NTCIP 2306 TMDD type of integration.
Real quick, before you go on to the next slide, I have a question that maybe you can help me clarify. This was solved by what she was mentioning. Remember how we wanted to talk to Riverview in 301 when Gibsonson in 301 got bad, and we were gonna basically tell that controller to do something based on that's something I think she touched on that. I'm just trying to make sure I
Peer-to-peer,
that's right.
logic, yeah.
That would solve that problem, correct? I just wanted to make sure I was.
So one example is we have a customer, they've got 3 very closely spaced intersections. One in the middle has preemption for a rail. The other 2 don't. And every time this one goes into preemption, these 2 are totally unaware of it and still sending traffic to that intersection. The space in between gets totally queued up, creates a major problem. So they used peer-to-peer so that when this one went into intersection, the other 2 knew about it And they would essentially go into preemption and not send cars towards that intersection while that preemption is running.
I know we were looking at it, but it ended up being a lot of logic statements or something. That's how we do it. Sure that was. So.
All right, so regional operations. So you guys need to look at how you can improve your regional operations between agencies. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As far as I'm aware, most of your surrounding agencies are running Econolite systems. And Kinetic supports all the Econolite controllers, okay? So within Kinetic Signals, we support our own controller, we support Econolite controllers, Siemens, Peak, and we're adding McCain and Trafficware controllers in 2024. It's part of our mission for Free the MIBs. I don't know if you're familiar with Free the MIBs, but we're the founders of that. And so it's important for us to, when we get a hold of someone's MIBs, we're going to put it in our central system. What does that mean? It means you could double pull those controllers, right? That is actually going on in Georgia right now. Like I mentioned, Georgia has our stuff at about 8,000 intersections. There's one city in the center of the state, Johns Creek, that still has a Econolite. And so they are double pulling those Econolite controllers. Johns Creek is using Centrax to talk to the controllers. GDOT's using our system to talk to the controllers. When a regionally significant event happens, usually for us, it's weather events, snow in Georgia, which is really like a flurry that turns into black ice and we all go home because we're scared of it. They go into statewide emergency operations when that happens, and they will take over, control the patterns to help route traffic. We also get a lot of hurricane evacuations from you guys. They usually come up to us when those are going on, and that's another situation where they will take over, have our system take over those controllers during that emergency situation. And when the event's over, Centrax goes back to taking over, no problem.
Quick question. I understand it works one way where we can poll the Econolite controllers. Does it also work the other way? Is Centrax able to poll Q3 controllers?
So the last information I got from Econolite was that they have integrated MaxTime version 2.3.0. That is a very old version of MaxTime. We're on like 2.11 now or something like that. And they charge additional license fees for it. So is it possible? Yes.
Okay.
Will they have to pay? Probably.
Okay.
They'll also have to pay if they want to update to our latest MIBs. They do receive our MIBs every time we get released because of Free the MIBs. But my understanding is they don't integrate it unless the customer is paying for that.
We also have the MIBS agreement, thanks to you.
We have a MIB sharing agreement with them because of Utah DOT where we
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
work together on
Have you
this.
ever implemented something like that in a metropolitan organization where they have different municipalities with different systems, and maybe they want to have CVAC?
That's not for double pulling, but yeah, one of the things that we have done, and I'll talk about it more on the next slide, is Kinetic to Kinetic. We have some pretty robust regional operations going on. For multi-agency with this double polling situation, the only one I'm aware of is Johns Creek and Atlanta, and also FDOT District 5. So FDOT District 5, they started doing TMDD with us and others. There were others that couldn't really get it to work. They've abandoned that program. So they have Orange County has our central system pulling our controllers. Seminole has a ATMS.now system pulling the Trafficware controllers. Somewhere out there, I think, is a Siemens system as well. Sweary, during regionally significant events, will take over those controllers, double polling method, to work with them. So that one is a multi-system situation. We can also talk about C2C over NTCIP 2306. It's not currently in our applications, not included, but we do have extensive experience integrating TNDD via NTCIP 2306 for video systems, sign systems, all kinds of stuff. Our legacy had it for the signal system, but again, since District 5 abandoned that, we don't have it today. I'm pretty sure Centrax supports 2306, at least for status and inventory. I don't know if they support it for control as well. And that's something we can discuss if that's something that the regions want to come together on and make happen. Some built-in functionality that can support you with regional operations. The alarm notifications tool within Kinetic is not limited to users in Hillsborough County, okay? So you can have the email notifications for flash alarms, Conflict alarms, whatever alarms are coming into your system that you would have text and email notifications configured for, you can have those sent out to your neighboring agencies.
I was gonna ask that, so just to confirm, you do have, your system is capable of sending text messages along with emails?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, and you can send those to users in your system, and there's also ways to get that outside of the system as well. We have a pretty robust kinetic to kinetic. I don't know if any of your neighboring agencies today have kinetic, but we're looking to take over the world, so they probably will sometime in the future. And our kinetic to kinetic, center to center is pretty robust. So we've got a system out in Coachella Valley, Palm Springs, California. And they manage the Coachella Music Festival, Ironman, national tennis tournaments, the annual President's Golf Tournament, pretty significant events in that area. And they have a kinetic system at a regional TMC. And that is center to center communicating to 11 cities that are running kinetic. And they use that regional system to handle those major events in that area. And it's a full kinetic center to center. So it's not just monitoring status and patterns. You can actually work with the TR, the reports, the action sets, all of it from the regional system for devices that are in a local system. And then I mentioned support for all major third-party controllers, and extensive device support for other devices like cameras, signs. If you are doing in the future, arterial signs can be a great way to route traffic. It may be something you want to look to in the future. RWIS, weather devices for event detection, tons of integrations that can be looked at in future expansions. And then the API, right? By using a GraphQL API, most vendors find that pretty easy and cost effective to work with. So if you're looking to buy some really cool machine learning thingamabob that does this sweet thing, you talk to them about our GraphQL API and they're going to probably say, yeah, we can work with that. All right, let's talk about EVP and priority. We have several different features in the software that can be used for EVP and priority and make things pretty efficient for you. So I'll start with preemption. Within the controller, we have several preemption features. First concern with serving preemption is serving the preemption. Second concern with preemption is clearing it quickly and getting your traffic back to normal. So we have several options for that. Exit cord, already talked about, right? When I get out of that preemption, just go right into coordination. Don't bother going to exit phases or serving the cycle and free, just go straight to coordination. Another option is to exit to the longest waiting car. If you're gonna get a phone call from an angry citizen, it's probably the one that's been sitting at that light the longest. So exit to waiting car will actually track when each phase receives a call and how long that call has been active since the preempt started. And if you use that option, it'll exit to the car that's been waiting longest. We support overlaps on a per overlap basis, so you can enable certain flashing yellow arrows during your dwell cycle, but disable other ones. That's really ideal when you don't want to send a flashing yellow arrow straight toward the train track, right? So you can disable those flashing yellow arrows on a per overlap basis. You can also change sequences. The peer-to-peer user logic we already kind of talked about to communicate with upstream and downstream detector intersections and make some decisions. There's also gate up and down control. So you can't exit track clear and go into dwell unless that gate is down. And you can't exit the preempt unless that gate is up. There's functionality for that. Some pedestrian functionality to when you're entering into that preempt, allow the head to clear through the yellow only during preempt entry, or immediately clear it while the vehicle continues to run whatever it needs to run to get into that entry. You can also drive blank out signs. So if you've got no right turn blank out signs going towards the track, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can completely reconfigure every input pin and every output pin in our controller to anything you want, including preempt status on or a special function, right? So you can trigger those blank out signs pretty easily. And we're highly interoperable. So we've deployed preemption in a myriad of ways, going from the traditional hardware-based detection methodology to NTCIP 1202, which we'll talk about on the next slide, 2 slides from now for your AI stuff. And if you have interest in max time CV, that can support the connected vehicle standards from Society of Automotive Engineers, which is a J2735 standard signal request message for vehicles that might have an OBU on board and are broadcasting and SRM. Priority, we have several features within the priority software that are very helpful. You can set your extension and truncation times on a per pattern basis. You can also decide whether or not you want to check in and check out to happen on the leading edge or the trailing edge of the detection. And you can conditionally disable your priority. So we mentioned the queue responsive functionality earlier, and the use case I gave there was your ramp backing up onto the freeway. Another thing you could do is track volumes on a road. And maybe when volumes are really, really bad, disable your prioriters.
That's a really specific question, and forgive me, but it's just something that we're dealing with now, that I want to ask about. As far as low priority preemption, okay, we know we have, track, railroad and bridge preemption, but lower priority emergency.
Mhm.
Do you guys have a feature that allows us to set a minimum duration before preemption gets resurfaced? Or is that only in priority?
So you want to have the delay?
For an example, if say my signal gets preempted by emergency vehicle. Once that preemption event clears, I want to be able to say, I do not want to run another emergency vehicle preemption for X amount of time.
Okay, so we have the resurface lockout for priority.
Mhm.
Do you know if we have a can you look at Matt's time and find out? He's gonna look in and check, slap John Privet and Mike Watkins. I know. We'll find that answer for you.
Yeah, I do pre-service lockout.
There you
Yeah,
We don't need to Mike.
So it is?
pre-service lockout.
Yes.
The preemption.
That's in the preemption settings. Yeah.
We also have advanced handling for the ETA. So a lot of controllers out there use the estimated time of arrival of a vehicle more like a delay. Won't start serving the prioriter until we're closer to that ETA. We handle it a little bit differently. So we take the ETA, say it's 30 seconds from now, and you look ahead in the coordinator and determine where we're going to be in 30 seconds. If we're already going to be in green, why bother starting to truncate? We're not gonna. If we know that we're not going to be in green, we'll start truncating, but we also know how far off we are from being in green. So instead of doing full truncations, maybe we'll only do partial truncations, right? Keeps the mobility a lot better so that you're not screwing with the timings too much. Right? And then we support NTCIP 1211. That allows you to get more advanced than just check in and check out, right? Because now you have class type, class level. You can update the ETA. So if we're told the ETA is 30 seconds, but then the bus stops to pick up people and it takes a little bit longer than expected, it'll resend a new ETA so you can dynamically update that ETA. We know that you guys have made quite an investment into applied information for priority and preemption, and we've worked with it several times. We've been working with AI probably since, I don't know, 2017, 2016 in Georgia, because they're in Georgia and we were the founders of Freedom MIBs. They had all the information they needed to make us one of the first controllers that they integrated with. So you can see here, the one at the left is not their preemption stuff, it's Glance. I don't know if you're familiar with that tool, but Boca Raton uses our local and central software and has AI Glance. City of Alpharetta, City of Atlanta, those total about 1,000 intersections. And they have the preemption priority. In the city of Alpharetta, they've equipped all of their school buses and are doing priority. City of Atlanta, it's emergency vehicles, the MARTA buses, which is their transit bus in the area. And then even beyond that, right, because they do a locally based integration, they're usually at the edge connecting to a controller. If you ever wanted to look at centrally based systems, again, that GraphQL API will make it easy for future integrations. Now let's talk about connected vehicle technologies. We've been in the connected vehicle space for quite some time. We have several deployments across the nation. I think we are the most widely deployed CV controller working with CV because GDOT has it about 8,000 intersections right now. But we have several in Florida too, and we'll talk about that here. So within max time, no additional cost, just inside of max time, we support off-the-shelf NTCIP and Battelle objects that are required for SPAT. Okay, if you're not familiar with SPAT, it's signal phasing and timings. It basically provides information like how long till this phase turns green and how likely are we that that is true, right? That's kind of the information that is included in a SPAT message. And NTCIP and Battelle is what many RSUs use when they're connecting to a controller that does not provide custom functionality like we do in MaxTime CV. That is operational with applied information devices in Franklin, Tennessee. We also have MaxTime CV. This is an application that can be installed directly on the controller. And what that application does is it takes all the information in the controller and translates it to that SAE J2735 format. The great thing about that is it makes it easier to be vendor agnostic. You don't have to find a vendor who has integrated our controller because any RSU is going to have integrated that SAE message, right? With that, we would support SPAT, MAP, TIM, SRM, SSM. I'll dig into what we're doing with some of those on the next slide. But the SRM, SSM, that's a preemption priority thing, right? SRM is a signal request message. If you've got a vehicle with an OBU on it, it's broadcasting information requesting priority or preemption. We'll pull that in and use it for priority or preemption calls. We broadcast that. You can put the map file directly on the controller. We'll broadcast that as well. We have integrations with the basic safety message, which is a message that a citizen vehicle would have. Includes how fast they're going, is their turn signal on, are they braking, where are they, all that. The personal safety message, which is a message that a vulnerable road user would have. Now, I don't know any pedestrians that carry an OBU in a backpack while they're walking around, but there's a lot of passive detection out there these days that will generate PSMs from what they're detecting and can send those to the controller, and we can do stuff with that too. And then we can also send out TIMs. We'll talk a little bit about that.
You know, if Bluetooth has your API implemented?
I don't know. They're RSU.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to have our API implemented to be able to get this information that we're sending out of MaxTime CV because we're using the RSU 4.1 standard that USDOT published. So we can communicate with any RSU out of the box using that standard. All we need is that vendor's headers and you can figure it in MaxTime CV and boom, it works. And we've worked with about 10 or so different RSU vendors at this point. Tested it just to prove that it works, right? And none of them required any development from them or us. So let's look at some applications. Within MaxTime CV, there's this programming table where you can say, if I get a signal request message from vehicle role 1, 2, and 3, on this lane, I want to call preemption. If it's coming from vehicle roles 4, 5, and 6 on this lane, I want it to call priority. So we take that signal request message, we identify where the vehicle is, what type of vehicle it is, and determine whether or not to be sending a priority call or a preemption call to the controller. And then we provide that feedback through the signal service message. Some safety applications that we've done with the BSM and PSM, we can use the basic safety message. We know the map information, we know where the car is, we know how fast they're going, and determine whether or not they're a red light runner or a dilemma zone driver. And then you can use that in the controller to maybe do a red extension. We've tested that in some areas where they're putting, they have a lot of freight. They're putting OBUs on trucks because it's a heavy downhill, a lot of dilemma zone accidents. And they'll broadcast us their BSM and then we'll do a red extension for them as they're approaching that intersection, help them safely get through because they're not going to be able to stop. You can also use the PSM, the personal safety message, and we can use the SPAT information, the PSM information, identify, is that person conflicting with a green light? Maybe force a signal into an all red, right? And then we have information dissemination. All of these are deployed in areas around the country. Each of these applications have been in use in real world situations. We can use any information in the controller and broadcast a TIM. Right, so we can do pedestrian presence alerts whenever the pedestrian detection is active. Broadcast a TIM message saying there's a pedestrian present at the intersection. We can do the rail blocking intersection whenever the preemption is in dwell, which means the train is driving through. Broadcast TIM that says the train is blocked. There's a train blocking the intersection. Another one is construction vehicle presence alerts. We can take in that BSM, identify if it's a DOT vehicle with the light bar on, and spit out a TIM for it. So quite a few applications that we've been implementing using that max time CV application. Now, we know that you guys have a project going on that might be pulling in at least 70 ITERIS RSUs in your area. I don't know if you guys have those out there yet, but we wanted to point out that we have worked with those. So these 4 deployments here are using those ITERIS RSUs. So we've worked with it before. Collier County, Orange County, City of Tallahassee was actually FDOT's response to the 2020 SPAT challenge. And that was using our max time CV with the ITERIS first.
Just real quick, for the D5, did you guys have any integration with SunGuide?
The D5, Pete can speak to that. I believe that's a pilot that they're doing, not in the field. I don't know if Pete, you know any more about that one?
I'm not aware of any integration to SunGuide, but you know, it could be. It's maybe something that we just haven't been told of. Right? They have deployed max time CV, pretty significant numbers around D5 with quite a few different manufacturers of RSUs. What they're doing thereafter now, the SunGuide, is that the Kira solutions and like the health monitoring? Is that what you're referring to?
No, so SunGuide's basically FDOT's.
The data exchange platform?
Yeah, their platform. I mean, it's not the computers, but that's what the state uses. That's where they have their cameras, their DMSs, their ramp meters, the RWIS, everything's in SunGuide. That's their central software, for lack of better terms.
Yeah. if
There's
it-
no
if it's the-
signals in it per se, but that's where they have the rest.
They do have them now.
But yeah, they're working.
Yeah.
They're working on it. I used to work for FDOT, so
Okay.
I know.
I did meet with Orange County last week and Jeremy as well at the district, and Orange County is looking to expand their CV deployment countywide in the next couple of years. And I imagine Jeremy will get involved with it. Yeah.
If it's the data exchange platform that we're referring to, I would assume that the way that data flow works is that it would be the RSU that would be forwarding it to actual SunGuide. So, I mean, although we may be producing the SPAT message specifically or actually generating it and handing it to the RSU, I think the RSU would ultimately be the one that would be forwarding it to the data exchange platform.
That's correct. It's the RSU that's forward to the DOT.
I was just thinking more for just in general for any equipment they have out there that, you know, we could potentially get information from, not just an RSU,
Mhm.
you know, any of the weather stations or anything like that, just curious.
Maybe we can try and find that information out for you in a follow-up.
Already has.
Question number 5 from you guys is how you can provide superior customer support, right? We know that you can't just deploy the system and then say, bye. It's not going to work for you guys. And we have no intentions of doing that and have not done that. We'll talk a little bit about that here. So included in this project would be a 2-year warranty on your controllers for ensuring that it is free of any manufacturer defects or workmanship errors. Also included is a 2-year software warranty to make sure it complies to the functional requirements that we delivered upon acceptance and maintains that functionality throughout that 2-year warranty. When we're working with you on the project side, we will make sure that we've provided you guys training on all the applications, and we will try and customize that training to you guys. So instead of just clicking through a preemption menu and saying, this is what this button does, this is what this button does, we'll help you configure one of your preemptions, right? So it is more context applicable to what you guys need to learn. We typically recommend doing what we call a fire hose training on the front end before it's even deployed. Throw everything at you, here's everything in the software. And then as we deploy it, we follow up with more extensive training, maybe a couple of days. And then we like to follow up with 6 months to a year later with a very less formal, unplanned by us training and more planned by you guys, collecting questions over the 6 months for things that you're actually doing in the system, and kind of like an ad hoc workshop type of training. We'll do a handoff meeting with you guys when the system is being accepted. That shows you what are the support mediums available to you and how do you get to them, making sure you have access to our manuals, our ticketing system, have the phone numbers of the right people to call, so that you can get the help you need. So what kind of support do we have? We have our local support. You hear Pete's on the line. I know everyone in this room knows Pete Yancey. And because they are local, based here in Florida, and have tons of engineers and technicians right in Florida, they tend to be our first line of support. And they all know our products really, really well. They also have a CT online university where they post training videos all the time that a lot of their customers love to review. And I can talk to you all day about what control technologies support is like, but PNC strongly encourages that you just call us customers and apps. Orange County, Collier County, where they support our products, the first line of support. They love CT. We also have some in-app support. So James will show that as part of the demo, but in the central system, the ATMS manual is built in. You're in a menu and you click the question mark, it opens the manual right to the part of the manual from the menu that you were in. So instead of having to scroll through hundreds of pages to find it, it brings you right there. Same thing happens in the max time system. In the max time system, you click on a field, there's a little question mark, and it brings up context sensitive help. That's also available on your front panel. So as your technicians are learning the system, they're sitting at the front panel and they see a parameter and they don't know what it is, they can hit the asterisk on the keypad and it'll pop up contextual help for what that parameter does. Beyond that, in-app help tools, we also provide remote support. So we have a ticketing system that you would receive access to, and we have a helpline, 833 Max Help. Both of those are staffed by a pretty large team of traffic engineers, traffic signal technicians, DevOps engineers. That team is under Mitch Terry, who's on the line. He's the director of software operations. So we've got one group of traffic folks for the controller support, and another group of DevOps folks and systems engineer for your central system deployment and the architecture and networking, things like that. You would use this ticketing system for any hardware returns. Any software questions? Hey, I'm trying to program a flashing yellow arrow with preemption. Help me out here. Someone will answer the phone and walk you through it. Reporting any bugs you might find in the software. No software is bug free, and that's just a reality of life. You'll have to report bugs to us, and you can use a ticketing system for that. Or submitting features or feature requests. One of the things I want to point out on the hardware returns, and this ties to the software warranty as well. If you need to return a controller to us, that stays in the United States. It is all local. We are the only vendor who is VABA certified. That's Build America, Buy America. So, you know, it's also helpful for the return time, right? It goes straight to Tucson and comes straight back. But a lot of times, Pete's team can prepare it here. Sometimes it's not even a hardware issue. They just gotta reflash the controller or something and get it back to you. But that is all here in the United States, as is all of our support staff. And then there's an online portal that Q-Free has that you can access 24/7. And in that online portal, we have tech notes, troubleshooting guides. Try this out before you give a ring and see if you can troubleshoot it yourself. Helps you learn, right? So you can become more independent with your system. Video tutorials, and it's also where we post our software for downloads. Talk about the implementation approach and the project team. We included a schedule, but one of the first things that we'll do if we are awarded this opportunity is we'll meet with you and agree on a plan. Does the schedule work? We need to refine it. Our implementation approach is built mostly around open and transparent communication and collaboration. So it's important for us to make sure we all agree on how we're going to deploy the system, and we all agree on the requirements. The other thing we'll hold with you guys is a requirements workshop, right? And this is very early on in the project. You had a list of requirements and we said, yes, we meet this, or maybe we said partial and here's what we do. And we'll walk through those one by one and say, this is what we said we were going to do. Here's how we're going to demonstrate that. Everybody good? So there's no surprises when we get inside of acceptance testing and what you're going to receive. We try and do as much risk mitigation as possible by keeping a risk log or a RAID. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the project management process log, to make sure we're tracking, monitoring those risks and doing everything we can to mitigate them. Quality management is a big part of our implementation, and it starts all the way at the dev side. So we have a multi-stage QA approach. Our devs QA their own code, make sure it does what we told them to do. Then we have a QA, a second dev who checks their code for them. Then it gets pushed to an actual QA mode where we have QA engineers independently testing new features and fixes that are being put in the software. And then before release, we actually provide a release candidate for our entire customer support team. There's traffic engineers and things like that that are helping you guys use the system. And they try and hit it the way you would, right? Devs are probably not going to hit the software the way you would. QA engineers probably not going to hit it the way you would. But our traffic engineers and technicians, they are gonna hit the software the way you would, and they do a final round of testing before we release any software.
When a new version of software comes out, within the system itself, does it have like a place that says there is a new update and it lets you know? And is there a way to have those updates automatically applied, like an N-2 type thing?
Yeah, so within the application, we don't do that. That is something that we're looking to add. But we keep a list of all of our customers, and when the release does come out, our technical support team e-blasts to all of our customers with the release. It includes the release notes. And we can have auto deployments if that's what you guys want. Some of our customers like to wait. We prefer auto deployments. It's easier for us in terms of coordination, right? Because there's less of it, but we'll do it either way. Some of our customers say you will not deploy software to our environment until we've approved it. Others say, please auto deploy. We just want the latest, greatest, and we don't want to have to worry about it. On the local controller side, that does not get automatically deployed, but you download it from our website, and James will show this very briefly during the demo. You can send those software updates from your central system. You can update the software through an all-red without putting it in Flash at a scheduled time. Now, I know this is proven because GDOT has updated a few thousand controllers, right? Or a few thousand controllers multiple times. They try and keep up with our software. They've been using our software since we were on version 1.9.3. And we're on 2.11 now, so 8 years. And for 5 of those, they've been pushing firmware updates from the central system through an all-red. So what they'll do is they'll schedule it to happen at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It does do an extended all red, so it goes in all red for, 10 seconds, which is why they do it in the middle of the night. And it comes back out. It'll give you an error log if any of them failed, and let you know this one failed, the controller didn't have enough space. Maybe you need to go in manually and clean up some space. And it takes care of all that for you.
So what percentage would you say that all your customers have gone to the latest software version? How many are still behind?
All of our customers, almost all, I would say 95% of our customers have moved from our 1.9 to our 2.0 version of MaxTime. And a lot of them get happy with one and just don't want to go through it. But they're all on a version of 2.0. I would probably say half of our customers try to stay up to date. Some of them might, we put out 4 to 8 releases a year on MaxTime and 4 to 8 releases a year on Kinetic. So sometimes they'll say, I don't care about those features, I'm gonna wait, maybe they only update once a year of all of our releases. So it widely varies, but being able to do it remotely helps a lot, and through an all red helps a lot. Most of our customers are doing it remotely, and many of them are actually scheduling it ahead of time and not around when they're doing it.
Just to kind of build out on that, say we, a controller gets updated with you guys' latest and greatest firmware, and we find a bug, that we don't like, or, whatever the scenario, how easy is it to roll back to a previous version?
Very easy. We're always reverse compatible. When you run the update, you can run it different ways. You can run it where the old version stays on the controller, because we can fit multiple versions of software on a controller. So all you gotta do is go in there, click it, and say switch back. Or you can do the updates where it's removing it off the controller, in which case you just run the install again. It's less than 5 minutes to run that install again.
Okay.
That's great. That's one great.
Oh, yeah, we can also update the Linux kernel, not just MaxTime, through an all red and remotely. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so that's not that functionality to do an update scheduled through an all red is not just limited to the application, but also our Linux kernel. And we are on the 2022 Linux kernel. I think most of the industry is still on the 2015 Linux kernel, or maybe even the 2013. ATC allows you to go as old as the 2013 Linux kernel. So ours is pretty up to date. And that includes a lot of security functionality like auto self-sign certs and things like that that can help keep the controller more secure. The other thing that really contributes to our approach on our project is having a very experienced project team and making sure that we don't have a bunch of software people who don't understand what you guys do day to day on the team. So this is our proposed project team. I am the principal in charge. I'm a PE, PTOE. I've been doing traffic operations and traffic signal timings for 15 years. 8 of those were in Florida, across Orange County, Sarasota County, Manatee County. So very familiar with the things that you guys are dealing with day to day. The project manager, she's a project management professional, Helen Wong. She's out of North Carolina, but she has done a lot of projects in our space. So she was the project manager for North Carolina DOT's tolling, statewide tolling deployment. So she's a PMP, understands how to successfully move a project from start to finish in an organized fashion, but she also still understands our industry. And supporting her, the biggest thing I like to point out on this is that we have 4 PEs, an EIT, 2 IMSA level 3s. I don't throw it up there anymore, but I think I'm still IMSA level 2. So it's a team of experts that really understand. And most of the people on our team have come from consultants who have been doing operations for DOTs in the past. So they know what's going on. They're not a PE who graduated and then came to a software place and still don't understand, how to operate traffic signals. And then Mitch's team for DevOps, it's all DevOps engineers and a security manager. So that they're really embedded in our development process and our deployment process to make sure that gets deployed smoothly and securely. And overall of our project approach is security. So everything that we do is under that umbrella of our SOC 2 attestation that we talked about. And that ensures that everything we do throughout the project is done in a way that's going to keep your data secure, right? And this goes down to, you give me a password to a VPN, I'm not sharing it with other people in my company, right? It's everything from how we hire people and doing background checks. How we handle passwords, how we handle data, how we deploy our systems, how we develop our code. All of that is handled under our SOC 2 umbrella, ensuring that the entire project is handled secure. So just to wrap up those 6 questions that we've spent quite a bit of time on, we hope that what we've demonstrated here in the presentation is that we can provide everything we do is open and non-proprietary. We are NTCIP compliant, ATC compliant. We work with Caltrans cabinets, NEMA cabinets, ATC cabinets. We currently do and always will publish our MIBs. And we currently do and always will support dynamic and shared central APIs that are modern and scalable. And we provide a secure solution. So we have the individual user accounts on the controller, as well as those individual user accounts of the central system that can use single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, etc. Our APIs can be secured, and we allow user configurable network restrictions. And what does this mean? It means you're going to get a secure system. You're going to get a modern system that is scalable into the future. I went over my 60, but we've been doing the questions as we've gone. So are there any other questions before we need to take a break?
So, personally, and committee members, are we satisfied with
I'm good.
questions and Q&A? I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll start break. Okay, good. Okay.
And then the questions we did not get answered for you today, we will get them to you. I'll send them to you.
Perfect.
So we're a little early. Do you guys want to take your 15-minute and come back in 15 minutes, or do you want to start back at the time we would have normally? So 2:45.
Oh, goodness. That long time. Okay, so.
Let's leave in the middle. How about we do 20, come back at 2:35?
Hey guys, what time are we re-meeting back at? It was kind of muffled on this side.
It is 2:30.
Thank you very much.
Like this type of for travel location, that's where.
Veterans District 4 wants to come.
Reasons. I appreciate it. I was trying to talk about like good process down the street.
You picked the right.
Mr. Chair, you make first.
And of course, they're ten.
Okay, minimize all the ownerships.
We can just.
I'm just gonna add you on there. I'm going to do their email, so I almost. You know what I mean? All right.
Ready to get rolling again?
All right, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Jim Gramzel, Technical Sales Manager here at Q3. So we're going to take a look at kinetic mobility and max time. I love the format change up. So Q&A during, awesome. We'll stop whenever. If there's something you want to see more in depth, please just let me know and we'll go there. The way I've kind of broken this down is taken up here, you had a list of requirements in section 2.2.2. So as I'm going through features, I'll mention the last subsection of that requirement where it pertains to, so we get all those boxes checked off. So the beginning would be .2, user interface. So here's the kinetic mobility user interface. It's a web-based program. You can see I'm just using this in Google Chrome, but it'll work in any sort of modern Chromium browser. If we look at, sure. If we look at our map over here, we'll see our intersection icons. We can hover over it to get some brief information from any particular intersection. Clicking on it brings up a little more detailed view with some information on coordination, some basic information on time, and more coord information there, and a space for comments, so we can add comments. When we do add a comment, pop it in, you get this little pop-up message here, so you know that there was a comment added. So working kind of left to right here, we have this map tool here. So we can toggle our base layers right by default. Right now, we're using Mapbox, but we do have integration with bin traffic data. So if you want live bin traffic data, you can toggle that map layer on, get live bin traffic data. On the map itself, which is going to be pertaining to section .5 map real-time displays, right? We do incorporate your GIS map, your Esri GIS maps, so we can pop those GIS maps into here into kinetic mobility as layers. So we don't need to lose all that data. We can just layer them onto there. When we get down, you see here we have fields here for all the different modules we have active. So if we go down to signals, we can change these to so that no problem to main green right now is what we have, right? So this is showing green, yellow, red, but a very useful one would be chord status. We pop this on chord status. It correlates to this guy down here. So intersections that are in chord are going to be green. 3 would be 5. If there was transition, it would be this brown. Right now, it looks like we're in chord. The number contained within it is the pattern number it's currently running. So it's a quick way to kind of view what's in chord and what patterns are running right now. And we'll take a look at the other tools on top here. We'll be using this a lot, so just go over it briefly, but this is a lasso tool that Winnie was kind of talking about, where you can lasso around intersections to create these kind of ad hoc groupings of intersections. And then from there, we could do a lot of things with them of checking status on multiple, doing live editing to multiples or scheduling to multiples. We'll get into like multi-database editing a little bit later when we start talking about database editing features here. We also have this over here. This is our distance tool. So just like on my Google Earth, you can use the distance, go over here, and take a look and see like, okay, that's a mile away. So if you didn't need to know, if someone gave you like vague directions, it's maybe half a mile down the street that this incident potentially occurred at, you can get a general idea of it on the map by using the distance tool. If I get back up here, I'm gonna go into the signals. I'm just gonna look at the intersection list. So you can also view all the signals by list as well. We have a search bar here. So if we type in like the intersection's name, it's gonna pull up, right, Alameda, Zuni, Evans, and Zuni.
The module version there, is that for the, how do you call it, the, next time? The, what's that?
Yes, the API, this right here.
Oh, the number, the 292.260.
Yeah, that's the next time version.
Yeah, right, that's a firmware version. So we also have filters where we can filter out things by status over here as well. You can actually save custom filters, so you don't have to create them every time. You can create something that you use frequently and save it. Those kind of features can be done on a per user level or per system level. So administrators can create like system-based groupings of those, but then each individual user can have their own section of saved filters, workspaces, a lot of different options within it.
James, while you're in here real quick, can you hit this button right here? Just want to see this. In any table menu, you can add or remove the columns however you want and filter that view to look exactly the way you want it to.
Yeah. So especially on a laptop, right, you might want to take out some of the columns you don't need to see on a smaller screen, but when you get back to your workspace, you have a wide, ultra wide monitor or something, you can pop those back on and get more information at a quick glance. Important part is going to be, let's go into Alameda and Zuni over here. Important part is going to be, especially at the beginning, intersection creation. So we can go into our intersection creator, our configurer here, and you can see it's pretty straightforward. Name, we can put in main phases if need be. We have this feature here called labels. Labels are your clusters. So every intersection can be in a group, in one group. That's typically your corridor. And then you can create labels and assign different labels to different intersections. So school zone intersections, intersections that have LPIs and stuff. So you can sort by your labels and click them. You can also send commands to intersections with a specific label, schedule command for them, send quick commands to them. Basically like you use Flex right now.
Joe, do you want to get any additional clarification on that?
Yeah, just a question as to, the county uses a lot of GIS and you can create intersections with those labels for LPI or flashing yellow arrow intersection or intersection with ped for text. Can you export those to GIS to then create layers? And can you export them, not only the intersection itself, but attributes about that intersection, like its lap long, so that it can be then plotted on GIS. So county uses Esri.
Mitch, I'm going to call on you to see if there's an export option that is specific to Esri. But one of the things that James will talk about is that we do use this, and you can export a geometry file that does include that information. It's just not in an Esri format. We use that in our adaptive. So there is an export option that's available. We use in our adaptive. But Mitch, do you know if you can get the intersection location information out in a way that can be then imported into Esri?
I mean, we can pull data, from the database if needed, but there's no direct like export a GeoJSON layer or anything like that currently. Potentially the GraphQL API might have something. Let me look into that, but I don't think natively there's just a single button for that.
Our exports for adaptive are, I think, JSON exports, so it might be in a format that we can do something with.
Translate.
Yeah.
Because once you create this layout here, if you go with like next time CV or next time adaptive, you can export all these settings. You don't have to redo it for your max time adaptive corridor or your max time CVs. You can just do it once and export it out.
Or ATSPMs, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if you want Utah ATSPM, you're going to configure in your ATMS and you're going to configure an ATSPM, but we can have the ATSPMs built in. And this whole configuration drives all of that.
Are you gonna discuss that, touch on that, during the, demonstration? ATSPM.
Oh, yeah.
The model, okay.
Yeah, and
That was just a nice thing.
Yeah.
Once you configure an intersection, it's configured for everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a one-time deal. It takes a little bit longer at first, but it has everything.
Right.
He'll show you that section.
And you can go the short way with it, you know, it's all about what you put in, right? The more work you put in at the front end, the more data you're gonna get out of the back end. So it's always best to configure it up front. But if you need a quick and dirty intersection to put in, you can pop one in 10, 15 minutes. But if you really wanna work on it, you know, it may take some time depending on the complexity of the intersection. As we go through the next tabs, you'll see why, right? We're adding in our approach lanes on this screen. We can add maneuvers between those lanes, so you can actually generate TMC reports based on those maneuvers that you enter in there. We can enter crosswalks. We can enter individual detectors on there. And then we also have over here, which is going to correlate to section .1, which is going to be the alarms and alerts. Right, we have all the standard NTCIP alarms. We also support custom alarms. So you're seeing this in intersection creation. There's also a menu for global system-wide alarms. So you can go ahead, if I click one of these alarms here, and go ahead and edit it. Right, I can rename it, I can change its severity, I can set reoccurrence settings in here and trigger acknowledgements from that and escalations for email alerts to higher ups. And you can do that on a global setting, and those will be your global settings, any new intersection, or customize it per device, per intersection. So if there's something particular at an intersection you want a higher level of an alarm for, you do it right here in intersection creation. We'll go back over to the map screen and we'll talk quickly about our section 0.3 multi-user capability. So it's a web-based application. You don't have to worry about installations. You don't have to worry about getting IT to approve an installation of a program on any device. You just need to get onto the internet. As long as you're public facing with it, right, any of your technicians out in the field, you at home, pull out your cell phone, pull out your tablet, log on. We'll see there, and let's have all that information on hand. And then we'll go into some user roles here. So from our side menu, we're going to go into our system settings and we'll look at these three security settings here of user groups, roles, and users. The nice thing about a web-based application, middle mouse button, you click, you open new tabs, just increases workflow. It's all the shortcuts you're used to when using a browser-based application. So you can create your user groups, you can create your user roles, and then assign them to users. So let's just take a look at a user, and we'll look at our configuration. All right, so Aaron is in the admin user group. If I didn't want Aaron to be an admin, I can turn it off and add to another user group. Roles can be toggled on and off. You can see if I hover over it, I get to the list of privileges. Going into the roles, you can add privileges to and from a role. And then from here, from our permissions, we have all of our different modules that are available broken down. And if you go into something like signals, you see we have configure, delete, update, create, all this. So you can potentially create for your technicians out in the field a view only mode, because there's some great features of being able to view status of the controller, from anywhere from across the street. After they complete a repair, they can actually view the status without having a partner go over and view the controller screen, have to walk all the way back to confirm that it was completed.
You can also configure this per intersection. So if you've got consultants that are doing corridor management for you, and you only want them to have access to that corridor that they're working on, you can do that too.
As far as users go, there's an unlimited number of users you can create. There's no lock on users currently logged in. So you really, the sky's the limit there. Create multiple different user accounts for that. And this is actually perfect because we're getting into .4, which is confirmation and error checking. And there's an example of confirmation and error checking, right? Okay, I've made a change and have unsaved changes. Do I want to confirm? Yes, I want to confirm. So when it comes to confirmation and error checking, got a couple features here when it comes to editing databases. Let me turn the signals layer back on. The signals, I'll take a look at the intersections list. Section here. Boston, Jamaica here for a sec. Ah, there we go. Yeah, I'll back up. So if we look at Alina and Zuni, we can go into live database editing. So this is, all this kind of is going to pertain to section. And potentially .11 upload download features. This is a different way to make database changes as opposed to the traditional upload, edit, download. So let's actually do this for multiple intersections. So let's lasso up these 3 intersections here. You'll see they pop up. So I'm going to view all of them. And now I have the option to select them individually or select all. And I'm going to go into this live database editor. So the live database editor is in real time, living the same, we use PubSub. So when someone out in the field is making edits, this is going to update in real time with the edits they're making at the controller. But it allows you to make changes in real time to the controller. So let's say we want these walks. Now we're going to take them down to a 7-second walk on 2, 4, and 6. We'll leave 8 at 12. But at this guy here at Alameda and Zuni, you can see that's made the changes to all 3 of them. If you notice, they're highlighted yellow. That's going to be a pending change that has not been confirmed yet. So at Alameda and Zuni here, maybe I want to get that phase 8 and I want that up to 15 seconds. So if I right click on it and I unsynchronize changes, I can change that to 15, again highlighted yellow. And that unsynchronizes the change from other databases. So you can make quick edits to multiple databases, either all at once or unsynchronize them and make specific changes to one database. If I go back here and let's say I made an error and I put like a period in 7, you saw that pop up, must be a valid number. It is now underlined red. If I could try to go save these changes right here, again, the save button is grayed out. You notice the 11 up here is 11 pending changes. Once that is back to an appropriate field, you'll see there is no yellow highlight there because I changed it back to its original value. And I made a change and that's changed back.
I got 2 quick questions.
Yes.
I think we mentioned that when it comes to the security of logging into the system, that you could set up geolocation, geofencing. Is that a global, or can we have it set up so that they had read-only accounts they could access from their mobile device provider, but then if they run the VPN and coming from our IP space, they could access their administrative accounts?
I think it's global, Mitch.
So yeah, when we're talking, yeah, I heard the question. So when we're talking about like geofencing, if you will, what I was really referencing was like geoblock. So not letting China and those folks come in, those types of things. Yeah, exactly. Blocking country codes, those types of, general security measures that are taken. And again, it's working with your security team and your security vendors to make it make sense and fall within line with what Hillsborough County's desire is for their security posture.
It's just something we like to do is try to limit access to administrative accounts. And obviously, there's times they might need a quick access. So a read-only account, and not just only like a changing account, is sometimes appropriate. But if they have the same access, it kind of defeats some of the point, like the same access methods. You want to have one more restricting.
So do they leverage like multiple accounts, like having a super account that they use?
Yes, correct.
So
That's standard practice in the environment.
Okay, so is that within your Active Directory as well? Joe Smith as a Joe Smith and a Joe Smith admin accounts within AD?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we could just, more or less, you could basically bring those users, both of them in, right? And give that admin user those extra privileges and selectively choose what you want for those things.
That's
Um,
correct. But I wanted one to be able to access it without having to be on our network through a VPN or different IP space for access.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a current methodology, but that's something we could take a look at, but I don't think we've done that today. But we can definitely research that.
Okay, and then two one-off questions. One, you do all this in-house testing for each version of things as it rolls out. It goes through different people for testing. And you have input validation here in the graphic interface. Do you guys do any internal fuzz testing?
Mitch?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
we
Go ahead, Mitch.
go ahead. Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, so absolutely. So part of kind of some of the testing that our security team does, we obviously run vulnerability testing against the code. I believe there's some fuzz testing as far as like in the actual code for automated testing against like the input validations, but we also do application penetration testing as well against our software, as well as, you know, network penetration testing from the outside for our cloud hosted environment. So there's, you know, layers and different elements of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then the last thing is just a real quick. When you have a customer that decides to allow this to be outside facing, have you had any security incidents to date so far where someone was able to leverage that as a attack vector?
No.
No.
We did have a situation last year where customers put controllers on public IPs. And there were attempts, but they did not get in. We investigated that, not on our central.
Like,
All right, so I have a question. I'm sorry, I don't want to burn up all your time. Mine will be a lot quicker. So on this screen that we're on right now,
Yes.
I can edit multiple databases. Can I manipulate their cycle offset split?
Everything.
Is there a way when I do that to say like if I change the cycle length for a particular pattern? Will kinetic signals give me like an automatic distribution of splits?
No.
Okay, and lastly, if I set a split that violates my pet time, does it give me a warning?
It does in the max time software. It will give you a warning when you're controlling on the controller. I'm not sure about here.
You can see the configuration validation menu in the status.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, so what, it'll let you send it down to the controller, but there's a configuration validation menu that exists in max time. And you can also see that in the status menu using kinetic signals. And that includes tons of validations. You can show it to you in max time when we jump over there, like your splits are not up to your cycle length, your barriers aren't balanced, you have an oversized ped, it's warnings and errors, right? You have a pedestrian activated with no detector assigned to it, or vehicle phase activated, tons of stuff.
As a quick aside here is max time is an intersection in max time. And if I hover over and click this config issues, it's live update. So as you're programming a database, if you do make a config issue, it's gonna pop up here. And then you see we have these in a triangle here is a warning. It's not critical.
So let's you send it and then you'll see the error there in the validation. Can you send a new configuration like a file only, so it doesn't take, but it only evaluates it at max time?
No.
Currently, no, but we have had some customers request that, so we're looking at adding that to the roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have an emulator for max time, so it's always best practice when you're programming a new database.
Okay, so we could.
Yeah. Launch your emulator, program it in there, and then see all your errors, save everything, and then once you're done with that programming in the emulator, export that out, bring that into a real controller.
That's all, that's.
Which you can download the emulator. Every time we do an update the max time, we do an update to the.
You can also put the emulator, the virtual controller on your network and add it as an intersection in Kinetic. So it's always there as a lab controller. Yeah, we have several customers who have 5 or 6 emulators always running and they've got it like sitting over their TMC. And it's different types of intersections and they use that.
Right. So, just one last thing. So if I do adjust my cycle length, will it at least distribute that extra time to Main Street? Or is that a feature that you guys can look into? So say I'm running 140 and I want to go to 160. When I type in 160 in the cycle lane, I at least wanted to say, hey, let me get an extra time to 2 and 6. And he can negotiate that after the fact.
Go to the forces. I gotta show this.
Uh-oh.
That's fixed versus floating port stops, right? When it's floating, it's gonna give that extra time to the main line. When it's fixed, it's going to give it to the next phase, and if nobody uses it, it goes to the main line. But go to the split menu.
Pattern splits.
It's in the split down further. Yep, you can actually choose the fixed and floating force off mode per phase. So you could actually say, I want the extra time to go to phase 1, but I don't want the extra time to go to phase 2. And that's really exciting when you're trying to like manipulate and squeeze out every second you can out of an intersection.
So, thank you.
Sorry, that one, I get really excited about that one.
We have a nice presentation on that too, with all the different modes you can
Yeah.
change forward into.
Stop, hold the phone, I have to talk about it.
If we hit save here, we're getting confirmation on all the parameters we changed. We can roll back each parameter individually. After review, we can leave a comment individually per intersection. We can also leave an overall comment for that change. Only then, when we hit save, we can also undo all. When we hit save, all those changes have been sent. We get confirmation here that they've been updated successfully. So that's a live change that just went out into the field. We'll go over here to a nice little feature, our workspaces. So these are again, a parameter that you can create per system or per user. So this is an area where you can stack what we call widgets from multiple different modules or from the same module. You stack them into this workspace and create this custom workspace, a shortcut. Doesn't have to be from one intersection, it can be from any device that's in there. You can resize windows at your leisure. But this is one we have one intersection. We have cameras up there. We have a sign, which you guys aren't going to use, but we can get rid of that. And we have some information. So we have some more room, resize it to our liking. And we have all this kind of basic information as a widget. Again, this is great if you do a public facing option, because you can pop this up on a phone for locations that constantly give you trouble and see all this information at a glance. And down here below, we have some small versions of our ATSPM reports. So we'll be diving into those a little bit more deeply later, but you just have all this information at your fingertips. Opening widgets allows you to add all these different tables and status to these workspaces here.
Now, it might be a silly question, but just want to clarify, are these widgets parameter settings profile based?
Oh,
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if you go with something that I don't like it, I'm not.
yeah, you can make your own.
But if the administrator makes something and you're not an admin, then you got to deal with it. Then-
Well,
Because that's, yeah. Then you can go ahead and delete it. And then kind of last comment here and confirmation and error checking, we'll talk about the more traditional upload download procedure and changes made from that. So we go to an intersection here, we go to details. You see, we'll get the details page of the intersection. Navigation is up here, so we're going to go to the database section, look at database management. At system databases here is where you can do a manual upload. You can hit upload again, comment. Once that upload is complete, you can go over on this side. Do it on this one while this one uploads, and you can actually copy this database. You can add a comment. Right, needs changes, copy that database. And that's going to pop over into your draft databases. Yeah, this one just completed up. We'll stick with this one. And you can go ahead and edit your database from here. Once those edits are done, an admin can come in, click it, and set it as the approved database. So only the highest level privilege is going to be able to manipulate your approved database. Again, comments can be made. So once you set that as approved, A regular user is not gonna be able to mess with this. Nights if there's construction, there's lots of changes going, but you want that database of record to download back.
And
once
and all
everything's
those changes are logged, so we can have a report with the log of who made what.
Yes, individual user changes, yes. And then again, in draft or in system databases, any databases can be compared. So if we click this one, see, so maybe where some changes that go all the way down here, we'll hit compare. Yeah, so we have some changes. If there were more changes along this left side of the screen, going down would be all the appropriate menus that have changes made, and then we're able to see what was changed. So from the database to database, right, the walk in index 2, phase 2 was changed from database 1 from 7 to 10. And you can go ahead and run compares like this on the databases. We'll jump into section .6 and .7, which is going to be intersection displays, detector displays. So kind of easy to combine. Again, we'll start off with our lasso tool and we'll bring up a couple different intersections. We'll bring up 3 here. We'll hit view all. We'll select all 3 of them. And now we're going to go into our live database status. So from here, you're able to see what's going on at the intersection in real time. We're going to click here. We can go and see our phase and call status. So that's everything coming in. And we can cycle through these 3 different controllers that we have selected in this ad hoc group and see what's happening at the controller in real time. Because it's web-based, you can just drag this off and drag it onto another monitor, resize it, or drag it back in there and put it back into the main page here. We can also, using control click, select multiple fields. So if I want something like phase and call status and I want detector actuations, I can get detector actuations here, scrolling down phase status. And it's not limited to 2. You can control click, especially if you have a vertical monitor. This really stacks up nicely. And of course, because it's just in Chrome, any way you can think of to resize it and shape it to the screen you have, translates directly into this. You can also from here actually put some calls in. If we go into like our preempt status, we want to put a call in for preempt 1. We can do that. You see up here, we have our changes. The reason why we have 3 is because we're currently placing that call to 3 intersections. So we did it multi-selecting. So if we wanted to, we could take that out. We could unsynchronize. And we could just put it into 1. Now, here's where the error checking comes in handy. It's still saved on those other 3. So I can go ahead and I can say, oh, I don't want it here. That was a mistake. And now I just have it saved on this 1 controller. And save it. Place the call. And there's the preempt call coming in.
Since this is the status screen, it's treated like a technician's call. So if you forget to cancel it, automatically goes away when your backup timer times out.
Yeah. So again, a good feature for a technician to have out in the field where they can place those calls remotely. All right, now we're going to get into the fun part, which is ATSPM report generation. So we'll go back to the map. We'll go and select an intersection over here. We'll go into details and we'll go into the report section. So on the left here is all our ATSPM reports. I'm going to put up a Purdue coordination diagram first, and then we'll drop into some others. So here's what pops out. Your phases on the top. Simulated detector hit, so it looks a little odd, very regular, but all the fields in the legends are toggleable. So toggle it off or on, toggle the detector hits off. And you can use your little magnifying glass tool here. You can actually zoom in on a section, get a little more high resolution, a little more detailed, pan around with it. Once you have it to the stage you like for that, click over here and download it. Take this file out, throw it on a dashboard, on a report. Below the reports comes some extra data. This will change per report. And then up here is where you can edit your time frame for each separate report. So if we look at something we saw a little bit during the presentation here is your average split data. Just another report here. You can change this and you can see your splits. You can see where, hey, maybe I can add more time, maybe I can subtract more time, maybe I don't need as much on this phase as other phases. And again, customize the time range for what you want.
I want to just point out that that's pulling, you know, the last 8 minutes, but it's up until the moment when we ran it, which is why you saw it spin. It actually got the latest high-res logs and calculated everything right there.
Yeah, what's it, every 15 seconds it's pulling?
Kinetic pulls from our controllers every 15 seconds. It can be limited with other ones based on when they actually publish them on our controller.
And then the other thing that was touched about in the presentation is going to be the interactive time-space diagram. So I'm opening up one of our dev sites here to show you this guy. So this is a fun one where right now we're looking at our program split. So this is just what's in the controller. We can use this to adjust our offsets. And we can push these timing changes down, all these offset changes, and it tells you each one. So once we get that down, we actually want to see conditions out in the field. So we're going to look at our actual splits. Not bad, or much better than the practice run. And we can move this stuff around. Maybe get it to work, but we just kind of leave that for the PEs to do. And then we'll send those timing changes down. And we can wait 10, 15 minutes, run the report again, see if any impact was made, slide it around again. Just an easy way, right? This is just 3 nodes, it's just 3 intersections, but this can easily be, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever. And even if you're just kind of bored in the office, it's kind of fun to play around and slide this stuff around. Well, let's see what else we have here. Report generation, we also touched on in the presentation, but that integration, because we're just utilizing MongoDB into third-party reporting tools is big. And I think we priced a couple of them too in the proposal. So we'll go into .9, security and access. We went over the user roles and everything, and I think we've touched a lot on the ability to have multi-factor authentication and single sign-on capability. We've had a lot of detailed questions about that, so I think we're okay on that.
One question.
Sure.
As part of your ATSP reporting,
Yes.
does Kinetic Signals recommend any pattern changes based on the data that it's collecting?
Not currently, but it is in our roadmap.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it in our roadmap to start gathering insights. This would be probably part of the analytics module. Gathering insights, making recommendations, evaluating how an event responds when, things like that.
Yeah.
We have, so a little bit of a side note, but we do have a 3 to 5 year roadmap. We're updating that regularly. And we're back with a lot of investment in our R&D. So, we have a ton of R&D engineers, and so we're heavily invested in the future. And so what we hope is that you select us to see is more and more stuff coming out that you guys can use.
That was actually my same question, but I wanted to add to it. Since you don't have a system that's gonna make automatic recommendations, if we make manual changes and we let them run for a period of time and collect data and run those reports, is there a way within the system to say from this time to this time and this time to this time, compare them and show me my differences? Like, was this a good change or a bad change?
Right now, you have to run the report for this time to this time, and then from this time to look at those ATS scans side by side.
So it'd be a manual process.
But we are, as part of the insights analytics, that would be a functionality that would.
I've never heard of this.
Third-party integration, you can configure an external reporting system.
You could use an external reporting system to get that information today, yeah, because we would provide our data schema from our database as part of this, and it does include some aggregate data, right? So we have all the high-res data, detector on, detector off, and then we also have some aggregated data. What was the actual percent of AOGs? What was the platoon ratio? So you can access that data to do custom reports with it.
So we'll go into dot 10, traffic control modes. So what he was talking about a little earlier is, these action sets that you can configure in here, the version routes that you can configure in here basically, or for special events. This is just limited to 3, but obviously you can add more, customize it as you wish, add more action sets, really build upon that. And then we'll show you some modes to send them down and control them. We go down, we go back to our map view. Again, we can send these through the scheduler tool. So what we have here, we have a issue with mobility running in Teams where the map kind of doesn't want to refresh. Since it's web-based, it's pretty easy to solve by just refreshing it. Kind of pops back in. I think it's a Teams issue. We're kind of blaming Microsoft for it, but
I have a quick question.
yeah.
And it's partially for Joe, partially for you. You mentioned, I think it was earlier, Whitney may have mentioned it, operating blank out signs through some of those actions. I know that for now, I think somebody manually, the RTMC has the wayfinding blank out signs. I think they're actually like manually activating them. No. So we actually have like wayfinding sign that says, route markers, like, so when,
For parking evacuation or
so
something.
I think one is hurricane evacuation, but the other one is just for like an incident, say like, make a left, whatever it says. I think those are manually activated
Through Sun Guide.
through Sun Guide.
Yeah.
But would that be something that we could potentially do with this software, that if we put in a diversion, if we put in pattern 47, whatever the diversion route is, it could turn the signs on?
Are they activated just by a output, like a on-off output pin type of things? Yeah, if you can get it wired into the cabinet where a controller can get to it, special function, output point.
I mean, it would be work, but it'd be nice to be able to turn those on without having to call the RTMC and say, hey, we're putting in a diversion route, can you turn on signs X, Y, and Z? That'd be a nice feature function.
Yeah.
Just that's an issue.
You don't need to use logic. You can schedule a special function straight down to the controller. So if you have it wired to an output for special function 5, just schedule a special function 5 to turn on at that intersection when the event happens.
Action set that says, that pattern 28 is.
Right, turn on.
And it turns.
Yeah, all these
But
signs.
to your point, it's also gonna be coming to the cabinet to be able to turn. So that special function has a wire that goes out to that sign. Right now, I think those signs have separate cabinets
They-
that are then controlled by something.
Right, like I said.
If they're NTTIP sign, which I assume they are, you can also use kinetic signs to control it logically rather than through input points, output points. And that's where the kinetic signs module option could also come into play.
I mean, it's the I4 frame, so we're learning as we go along, but it'd be
Yeah.
nice to know for future deployments if we did do something that maybe it's something we should consider.
Yeah, I mean, I could just comment a little bit. I think they are, they have 11 different messages on them. They're blank out signs and they're run by a web relay.
What's a relay? Okay.
I have,
But once that does get sorted out, you can go in here, and especially if you created a label for those things, you can just select the label, use the scheduler tool and send, action sets, the commands down there. Send that action set down to those controllers and have that done. As long as there's something in the controller that can drive that externally and it can be programmed into the database, you just manipulate it in the database and send it in with an action set. So if we send that action set down to these controllers, we can name it a test here. We hit next, and then we can do it as a recurring task, a single task or an ASAP command. See how long it wants to run for.
Can you do that like in a macro, like having more than one task? Then have like a menu or basically an easy button where you would do several tasks together.
At the same time, schedule several tasks at the same time. Not currently scheduling several tasks at the same time, just several intersections at the same time.
But if you knew you were gonna be doing that combination, that's where you would have a pre-configured action set.
Build it into the
And
action.
you would
set.
just schedule the action set.
Okay.
And then you go ahead here, you save it, and you see the scheduler pop up. This is gonna be your kind of Outlook style calendar here. It'll give you these basic information of what's happening. If you need to know more on a specific date, you can click this that date and see exactly when and what functions are happening. When you go here on the scheduler, this is where, at the beginning of the project, you start getting things online. You want a database backup every night. So select all intersections, or you can create a label that all intersections belong to, just like the all group. And that's where you can do a single signal database backup or archive every night. But for your guys, it'd probably be just a backup every night. Here we'll just select groups of intersections. Name it. We hit next, and we would make this just a recurring task. We set the time. We can make it not ever ends, and when we send that down, it gets on the scheduler, and you'll have that backup schedule task on there every day. You can also do when you want to update your firmware, and you don't have to go and do it individually, just do it from the scheduler tool. Another part of traffic control modes would be the multi-database editing that we went over. So you have the upload, download, traditional upload, edit, download. You can make changes to, you can do it live through the multi-database editor, or you can push preset changes down through the scheduler tool. We went over a little bit of traffic responsive, so I'll show you kind of our traffic responsive tool here. So if we look at our traffic responsive plans and we edit, again, we don't need system detection. We can leverage any detector that's integrated into kinetic mobility in there. And you do that by creating detector groups. And once you have those detector groups done, you can edit these parameters, and tweak them, and put in your traffic responsive plan so you can see. We have minimum movement thresholds, we have volume thresholds, occupancy thresholds. We also have this K value, which is a weighting factor. So you can add multiple detector groups, but if one is a little less reliable, you give it a lower weight in the equation of whether to implement that traffic responsive. Then we have multiple actions that we can do within this traffic responsive plan based on the conditions that it sees out in the field. And again, traffic responsive is included. It's in there. It's not like a separate module that we're pitching. It's just in the base kinetic mobility package. Section .13 timing plan generation, and we'll jump a little bit into .22, which is adaptive signal control as well. So adaptive signal control here is it's agnostic, or kind of an adaptive agnostic kind of thing. So whatever you have, as long as it's not necessary for a central system, unless you want to do double polling, you have two centrals. We can work with our adaptive solution. Max Time Adaptive is a locally distributed adaptive system. So each controller has a software on it. Each controller is doing its own processes on the controller, what's going to work best for it. Then through the peer network, it shares that information about what's best for me with everyone else. They all talk to each other. They come to a consensus of, okay, this is good for me. This is good for me. They kind of go back and forth until there's a settling point that's best for everybody. And then that change, it just gets written, because we do database updates live, it just gets written to a pattern. By default, it's going to be pattern 10, but if you get an adaptive system, you can change that. So it's pretty easy to tell.
So it has the ability to look at the corridor holistically as opposed to just one intersection.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. It actually also has the ability to, because it's distributed like that, it's a peer network, to reconfigure itself. So you can set what's called a critical node, where if that were to go out, right, the whole system just reverts back to time of day.
Right.
But let's say you have 8 intersections, intersection 2 goes down, right? So that's going to cut the comm from intersection 1. But 3 through 8 are still good. They can say, hey, 1 and 2 are down. Let's reconfigure. We're now the 3 through 8 corridor, and we'll start talking to each other, and we'll do what's best for the 3 through 8 corridor.
Okay.
And then if you wanted to see that, you would just have to go to your map overlays here and go into port status. And that's where you would look for intersections that are running on pattern 5. You could also sort that, as you saw earlier, for the intersection list. You can go and filter by pattern number. So you could just pull up anything that's running that pattern. Then let's run in pattern 10 to take a quick look at everything that's running adaptive.
If you're running adaptives that aren't ours, most of them, the way they work, whether they're locally distributed or centrally distributed, central commands will still override those adaptives. I don't know if that's true for all of them, but it's probably true for most of them. So if you're using adaptive systems that aren't ours, this system can continue to monitor them and override a central command if you have like an event where you want to say, stop doing the adaptive, I need you to do this right now.
Coming up next is gonna be dot 14, which is clock sync. So on any intersection, if you want to get the clock synced up quickly, you can go here and just do set time now. On the scheduler, there's also a set time command you can send. So if you want to set time every night, you can schedule a daily recurring task for set time. In the system settings, the global system settings, there's a threshold you can set that you can see here. We have this drift value. I think by default in here, it's 5 seconds. Set up to what you want. So if it were to drift more than this value, we're gonna try to reset it and send time down. One of the unique things is you can leverage your existing GPS units as a backup for that. So within max time or intersection control software, within the Linux settings, there's a time sync hierarchy that you can set. So obviously first is going to be, the NTP server, it's going to be coming from central, but if you lose comm, you can say, okay, second, I want you to go check this GPS device that's interfaced with me. Okay, maybe if you can't get that, then we can drop to line sync and then we can drop to the internal crystal source. But it will just automatically go through that hierarchy of clock syncing until it finds something where it can actually get its time corrected again. So you don't have to lose the devices. And then our XM controllers have a integrated GPS port there. So nothing external, no external parts to get the GPS into there, just in which, yeah, the antennas are existing out in the field and you still have them. Okay. Section 15, managed timing plans. I mean, we went over that a good amount. Let's talk about dot 16, congestion monitoring. So this is where I get to show workspaces again because I like them a whole lot. There's a big traffic layer, but I do want to bring up workspaces again because they're just so damn cool. This is where you throw in the workspace for your congestion areas. You see here with the integrated video, we have the camera feeds, but once this tour loads up here, this is, I don't know if you noticed last time, but it's actually a tour, so it's rotating through a pre-select group of cameras. Right after this, we're going to go into the video segment, but it's going to rotate through a couple cameras that were pre-selected. And you can tweak these settings to how quickly it rotates through. You got all your information up here. You can actually use this while you're looking at the cameras as a little mini database screen. You can put the details here. You might have to resize it based on the size of your monitor, but you can go in and look at databases. It's a little cramped when it's only 1/8 of the screen, but go through everything you have in that intersection, just like you were doing it from the main map screen.
You can also add a map as a widget with that Bing traffic layer turned on. So you can have a map widget with the Bing traffic layer. And one of the things that we're adding in 2024 is the ability to configure your own colors based on detection information. So to be in that detection information, saying if it's this and this, I want it to be green. If it's this and this, I want it to be yellow. That's functionality coming in this calendar year.
Yeah. You see up here, I'm just selecting a camera up here. I can easily just pop it in. Now I have a different camera up there. So it's easy to edit and save and create as many as you like. But with all the camera talk, we'll go into the video section here. So that's dot 17. So we'll look at the video wall. select a new layout. And we'll start adding some cameras here. So you just find your cameras over here that you want. You can group them, like these are grouped per region, and you start dragging and dropping. I'm gonna make a smaller video wall so you don't have to watch me like drag them.
I think we're also having some bandwidth issues with the internet, so less.
Yeah, so that's, it's a good point to make that question. So that's with the kinetic video
Correct.
audio.
Yeah.
And so because it's a cloud system, how do you handle the bandwidth requirements and usage of camera streams?
So you would still have your video distribution server on-prem, whatever video distribution you guys currently have, you can probably integrate with it. And then Mitch can probably talk about the bandwidth of getting that from the video distribution to the application UI.
Yeah, I can kind of talk about that. So typically what we're doing, since we're not processing or re-encoding that video, if you're external, you've got, different feeds, you'd have like a public feed, if you will. And then you'd obviously have your private feeds for access. So, you can't get to your internal IPs if you're gunning from your video distribution locally. It just wouldn't work, publicly from that perspective. So all of the video distribution when you're kind of on-prem at your office or whatnot should be just over your existing network to your video distribution, whether
So
that's
for that to work, if I'm understanding correctly, for that to work, what is public facing, we would need to have a public video distribution as well.
If they're gonna be accessing it without being on a VPN to your network, yeah.
That's correct. You'd have to make sure that your feeds were available publicly over your WAN, use some other video distribution type system, or just making sure that when they're only getting video feeds from internal.
Does your video management system offering, does it include public facing feature that we could use to start with that public website with cameras if we wanted to?
We have 511 as a module on our roadmap. It's a little bit further out though. But we've integrated with several 511 providers like Castle Rock, iLog, so we're pretty familiar with doing that stuff too.
I just want to make sure to clarify, because it doesn't make sense to me. If this is on my edge somewhere, either behind my firewall and I open it or on the DMZ or whatever, but my camera feed aggregation server is inside my network and they can reach each other.
Or that's what you mentioned, so it doesn't, you're gonna be able to do this if you have a public facing camera stream.
That's what I'm saying. The camera stream shouldn't have to be public facing if it can, as long as it can reach this server.
Because what they do is they probably send you the IP information with the stream information, so you're.
That's correct. Your browser has
Web
that.
will actually display it, because they're not decoding and recoding.
You don't have to, you could just aggregate it.
We're just handing it off, right? So when you set up your
They're
stream,
not decoding.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
recoding.
if you're handing it off, you still should be able to hand it off from the inside, though, if it's reaching it from the inside, it shouldn't have to go from the internet.
that's correct. If you're sitting at your office, right? We'd hand you the inside address based on how you configure it.
The way they have right now is basically links to your IPs if you have it internally only.
I mean, this is really secure, but when we talk about making our cameras public facing, that's a different story.
That once we have the public facing camera, I guess the cameras that we would put in there would have to be the public facing the URLs, and then that's how we're gonna be able to see it on the outside.
But we're not gonna make public facing cameras.
We wanted to.
And you could just have it to where the video piece is only gonna work if you're on the network, right? And then you don't need to worry about any of that. But public facing camera feeds, it's really just gonna be a business decision for you guys. Do you wanna have a 511 website where someone can, a citizen can actually look at what's going on? If so, you'll have to do public facing feeds, right? But if you don't need to do that, you don't wanna do that, then we could have this to where the users are only gonna use kinetic video if they're sitting on your network, where the VDS is also located.
Who do you guys use?
We would definitely want public facing. I would ask for guidance from Leland on this, but eventually do we want some, if not all of our camera feeds on the county website or, traffic management tab of the county website? Similar to a 511?
Yeah.
Is that something we would look to do in the future? I would say yes.
We want that, the option to. do
Yeah, we
that.
at least discussed doing that. We don't have done it yet, but it's something we want to do.
I mean, it's not advanced, I don't want to be real, it is. Like, it was just,
Yeah.
but definitely, I'm just trying, as a network engineer, I feel like I would have a way around that without having to have a public face.
That's,
To be coded, again, which is what we said, they're not doing that with software, so
I wish they relay. That would act as a proxy.
they will need to have, a routing function, network function.
Something that would be really, really good for you and Mitch to sit and nerd out on. Because he knows the
Yeah,
video
if-
side of it really, really well. But, and it sounds like you know your network really well. So I think that just comes down to when we're in the project inception phase, looking at how we can architect that to just fit your needs. And while it's still meeting your security constraints.
so quick question. What do you guys use today for video?
It depends on which department. We don't have one solution.
Right now, we're using Chameleon.
Okay.
And out, in the light version of Chameleon. So nothing up, currently up to date from Flare.
Yeah, I mean, if you have something that, internally that you can use for inside outside routing, similar to something like F5s or even some type of proxy, yeah, you could absolutely use one generic DNS so that if you resolve it inside your network, it goes internally. And if you resolve it outside, you can go publicly. That's absolutely a solution. If you use DNS, it can handle that natively, right? So I definitely agree with you. When they're on site, they shouldn't go to a public side. That doesn't make any sense for routing. You don't want to go outside in. So there's definitely ways to kind of architect that, and we can work with you guys on that.
Moving forward, I don't want to derail us.
Yeah.
And then once all that is figured out and they all talk and all the network stuff is kind of figured out, you can just pop it into full screen mode and then bam, you got a video wall. You can throw it on another video. And also there is the button here too, if you do a public feed where you can actually quickly kind of turn that off. So if there's something that you want to cut off real quick, you hit the button, pause, and turn it off. You can PTZ them if all that stuff gets worked out. These you can't because these are public feeds, but typically you would just click on them, right? That would be your panning and tilting, and then mouse wheel to zoom. There's also a scheduler within here. So if you rotate your cameras based on time of day, you can pop that into the scheduler. It looks the same as the scheduler in Signals, and have them rotate, X amount of degrees by time of day. And since we might need some more information on it, if you need help at any point, there's context sensitive help here by clicking documentation, the little question mark. You pop that open and look at it, took you to the video. I don't think it's going to be that deep in the network stuff, but maybe we can record the conversation and add it in there later. The other thing we saw were tours. So if we go to videos and we go to tours, and we click a tour, this is what we saw a little bit on our workspaces page. This is where it goes through the camera. So you can toggle more cameras. This might be the wrong tour. So Chesapeake. That's Chesapeake ones. They're both.
It's the signal store.
Yeah. So once it loads up, you can see we have these cameras here. We can add more. We can change the speed of them. We can rename it and get your tours going.
And if you've got presets, you can just use the same camera and go to the 4 different presets. It'll rotate the camera for you.
Yes. Let's move on. Section .19 EVP and priority. We talked a whole bunch about that. We'll talk a little bit more when we get into max time stuff. But the last thing to add on that is if you have like an EVP or priority map layer you have in there, you can actually hold control down on the map layers and rotate and go into more of like a 3-dimensional mode and sort of drive around the map and follow things along. So if you have that kind of detailed map where you have those details and you could use that 3-dimensional, it's a possibility to go ahead and do that from the map.
If you have 3D Esris as well, the map itself supports X, Y, and Z.
We have about 20 ATMS communication. So we have down here, we have our communication failed. This is our kind of quick bar here of statuses. We don't have any com failed, but if we did have some, we would see some there. If we need to find out why the com failed or what's failed, we can click it. We'll click these that are running in free. It brings up the list of intersections that are running in free. If it was com failed, it would bring up the list of intersections that are com failed. If we go to signals here and we go to our system reports, we have a device communication report. So it gives us some information about communication over time. We can customize these date ranges. You know, kind of nice thing here would be the downtime percentage. So if you run this report for a couple of days and you see something that has an unacceptable downtime percentage, that might be a time to send a technician out there to investigate why. You know, it might be intermittent enough that you're not noticing it too often, but you can run this and see, hey, you know, that intersection is down 7% of the time. That's way too high. Let's go take a look at that. Dot 21, data collection. So we looked at the ATS PM reports. We looked at, we talked a little bit about third-party integration and the reporting features that are in there. The one thing we did not look at, so let's go back to the map. We'll click on intersection. We'll go into the details. We'll look at the reports and we'll look at the device events. Takes a little long to load, again, because it's pulling that data bin every 15 seconds in. This is going to be a high resolution data log. While that loads, we'll look at the filters. Again, filters, date ranges. You can add rules to the filters, parameters, logical functions here, and keep stacking them, and then save those filters so you don't have to do it again of what you'd want to search for.
I want to point out that we're adding more filtering options to here, but one of the things that is in there is parameter versus vendor parameter. And if you do end up with multiple controllers in your system, we follow the Utah standard with our high res data and our controller. So does Econolite. The others do not. So vehicle detector on, vehicle detector off is not using event code number 43 like we are. It's using Siemens event code 76. So you can, if you end up in a situation where you're pulling multiple controllers from other agencies and you know what their native event codes are, you can filter by that, but we also translate them. We normalize the data all into the Utah standard. So you can search by the high res event itself.
And from here, you can just look through your high res data, find what you need to do, filter it out and go in there. And then that's a good transition in here into max time, because we have the same thing on the controller level. If we go into our detailed event report on any one controller, we have our high res data logs that we can go ahead and download. Since it's a web UI, as long as you're at the TMC or on the network, you can just pop in the controller IP/max time and get the max time web UI and download from there as well. You can actually also download a time period preceding the last failure. So you can comb through those high res logs preceding the last failure and troubleshoot, diagnose a little bit. That also ties into our status replay. So status replay, you can go back in time and hit play, and that's going to run what was happening at that intersection at that period of time. That also runs into last failure. So how much does it save before? Is it an hour or so?
It depends.
Yeah,
The last failure will always be there forever and ever.
the last failure save time. It's just going to depend on the amount of.
The last failure is always there. It's the live one that it'll only store so much.
Yeah, I mean, preceding the last failure, how many minutes?
Oh, I don't know how many minutes before last failure.
Based on how much data is being.
Yeah.
If you have an intersection that you have multiple instances that you want to watch, just if you put a memory drive in there,
Yeah.
you can get more.
No.
Or do you,
I can-
they can do SD.
The status replay is really awesome for your technicians, right? Because if they get a call from a citizen that something's going wrong, you show up at that intersection and it's no longer going wrong, right? You rewind the clock, you hit play, and you can watch what happened around the time that call claim came in. The last failure stores the moments leading up to a flash event. So if if it happened like 24 hours ago, the flash event, and the data is theoretically already off the controller at that point, the last failure is still there. So you can go to that status replay and watch those moments that led up to that flash incident.
This is the home page. This is your landing page when you log onto any particular controller. Again, it's a dashboard and it's customizable. You can drag these tiles down. There's multiple new tiles that you can add on there, customize it. It's per user. Each user has their own username and login. That username and login can also translate into we use phone number as a username and then PIN code. So to log into the front panel of the controller. And through there, through the user account options, you can actually go through and you can lock down features by feature for each user. So again, by giving a contractor a login and only allowing them to put a recall in when needed, but not mess with anything else, is always handy. From the home screen or from any screen, there's a lot of status screens that have this. You sometimes see this red highlight here, right? This is pattern 2. If we click that, that's a hot link. That takes us right to pattern 2. If we want to figure out what pattern 2 is doing. A lot of fields have this item and table view. Personal preference, I prefer table. Item view, you can see here, if I want to see multiple patterns, I have to select them. If I go to the table, I'm seeing everything. If I click this, it's going to show me the ones that aren't being used, right? So we have 128 patterns here that we can select from. You don't need to see that at all times. So if we turn that off, it's only showing the ones that actually have data in them. And you'll see here, I have the help up. This is the context sensitive help here. So if I click that, I want to know about all the port modes that we included here, right? It's going to give us an explanation of each one and exactly what it's doing. You know, there's some unique things with us. There's some things that maybe you haven't seen in other controllers. There's also some things you might need a refresher on deep down in settings. So this is just going to give you an explanation of what each one of these does within max time.
Just want to give you guys an update. We then put in answers along with the presentation. We're at the original 7 minutes, so there's 30 minutes left that, and there was also an opportunity for hands-on, by the team if they want to choose that. So I just want to give you that. So 4:10 would be the hard stop.
4:10 is the first.
Perfect.
No problem.
Perfect. So I'll just go over a couple high-level features in here, and then, you know, we can do kind of hands-on QA all together and come over here and play around with the system and generate some more questions. But performance will also include a couple of ATSPN reports in here, termination coordination and service time reports on the controller itself. And last thing I'll go into is kind of database management. So in, especially when you get the emulator, we have all these factory templates. So it's like an easy start to different styles of controller. You don't have to do it from scratch. So we have here, you know, your diamond interchanges here, standard NEMA TS2 stuff. We have some Hawk starting points to go from. Once you make one of those and you get it up to your standard on the county, it can be saved as a user database, as a template. And then it's pretty simple just to go from that by just, you know, here's a template I have by just clicking on the intersection and then copying it, creating a new one, renaming it, and going from there and making the final database. So this is the emulator tool. I don't have the controller in front of me that I'm connected to, but this is the thing that you start in the office, you program your stuff on here, pop it on a USB drive or plug into the controller and download it to there.
I just want to emphasize, this is the emulator tool, but it is an exact replica of the software that runs on the controller. Okay, so
The
it's-
question, that was a real live controller or just the emulation?
This one is the emulation, but it is exactly the same if you connect to a controller. So, you know, it's different than some options out there where you get a front panel emulator, or maybe on the controller, there's a pared down version of a web UI, but it doesn't access every function on the controller, and some functions are only accessible on the front panel. Every function within the controller, and if you look at the front panel, just real quick, go to status and show the front panel emulator. If you are looking at the front panel, what you'll notice is that the menu structure of the front panel emulates the menu structure of the web UI. So it's easier to move. And then when he was in Kinetic, right, the menu structure in Kinetic emulated the menu structure of the controller. So there's not having to learn how to work with the controller in the central system, and then having to learn how to work with the controller in the web UI, and then having to learn how to work with it in the text UI. Once you've learned it once, It may look and feel a little bit different, but the navigation is gonna be the same.
And that carries over to integrated third-party controllers, Kinetic, when you integrate the third party, like we have EOS controllers integrated in there. That menu structure you see is the EOS menu structure. So you don't have to do translations in your head of what does it mean by Q3's max time standards. You just see the menu structure of that particular third-party controller emulated in there. But yeah, the only thing different about this emulator and the Max Time Web UI is that this top bar would be gone and will be replaced by the address bar of whatever browser you're using.
We just type in the IP address if you're on the network of the controller and this exact thing.
So I think at this point, we can do some hands-on, some Q&A. So if anyone wants to come over, you're gonna do Max Time.
I have the Max Time emulator running on my laptop that you guys can play with, and they'll have the
2 mobility stations up
the
here.
mobility stations up here for you guys to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, similar to the last presentation we had, chose to forego like the hands-on demonstration, in lieu of, questions and you actually showing us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is, we had a list of questions that we wanted to ask either during or after the, your demonstration phase. And from my notes, it appears as though you answered everything that I wanted to ask, except for one question. So I do want to pose that question. And the question was, it's not really a question. We want to see a demonstration of any unique features that increase the programming flexibility of the controller. Specifically, how it handles flashing yellow arrows, twice per cycle programming, anything that you guys can think of that may not be or may be unique to your controller.
Stop presenting.
Yeah.
Whitney's on. Hey, did this work before? Was it for it now?
Let me rejoin the teams real
Whitney,
quick.
you have 25 minutes now.
Timing, can you stay to like 8 or 9?
All right, so I'm gonna launch the Max Time Windows emulator real quick. Share my screen. I'm gonna launch a database in here. This is a random database for Boca, so I don't know what I'm launching here, but
We'll find out.
I'll find out.
Unlike.
So if you wanted to run a phase twice per cycle, right, a double serve left turn, right? The best way to do that is to program your sequence as 1, 2, 11, right? And 1 and 11 are going to be that double pump left turn, and you drive it off of an overlap, right? But you can disable that or change sequences by time of day.
Okay.
So you don't have to continue to do that. You can change your overlaps by time of day. So I'm sharing my screen, but it doesn't look like it's sharing. Let's try and share that. Share screen.
We can see now.
There's a little bit of a delay. I've got it on my screen.
You have it on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not put over the TV. That's okay. I can work with that. So let me go to the controller menu sequence. So I think James mentioned this, but we do support 40 phases, 32 sequences, and 16 rings. So 20 sequences and 16 rings. You can program as many sequences as you want. You can program as many rings as you want. So let me just go through real quick. I've got a double pump left turn. A is your barrier, 3, 4, B, and now it's a double pump left turn on a split phase intersection, right? Because I've got 3 and 4 up there. I can also run 2 intersections off the same controller. So now I'm going to do a 21, 12, and I won't do a double pump on that one, 13, 14, B, and 15, 16, A, 17, 18, B. Now I've got 2 intersections running off the same controller. They're using the same barriers. They cannot advance to the side street unless they're both advancing to the side street. Or I could change this to a D and a C. And now there are 2 intersections that are completely operating independently, right? So that's how you can get some flexibility in your sequencing. And then you would just go program an overlap. I'll pop over to my overlaps real quick. Overlaps. And I'd have an enabled normal overlap with included phases 111. Map my output pin to that overlap. And that's it for your double pump left turn. Another thing that's really cool that we've had some agencies do, so let's just say mobility, right? You've got a massive mainline movement and a side street left turn that gets just enough traffic to trigger every single cycle, but not enough traffic that you actually want it to serve every single cycle, right? You know, some people like this, some people don't because they don't want to get calls, but we have a function in here called serve every other. So I could take my left, if I have a split phase, let's just say, or a left turn on the side streets, I could serve the left turn on one side every other even. And if I had a phase 7, I don't in this section, the left turn on the other side every other odd. 3 will serve on the even cycle, 7 will serve on the odd cycle, and you don't have to serve in every single cycle. It should
So-
you some time.
If you went 4 and 8 on that, what would happen if PED call came up?
It would wait till it's next service.
So it was, so it wouldn't. So it would
So-
skip it or it wouldn't skip it?
It would not skip it, but it would continue to serve 4 on one cycle and 8 on the next. So let's just in a split phase scenario,
Mhm.
right? I'd serve 1 and 5, 2 and 6, then 4, 1 and 5, 2 and 6, then 8.
Okay,
And so on
And the adjacent pair would run.
with the
Every
appropriate.
other cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can run with oversized pads, but also I think this functionality exists in most, but if you wanted to, you could have, max screens running by time of day. And have your splits large enough to cover your pad, so it doesn't go into transition, but activate max screens. So that when there is no pad, it serves the max screen instead of the split. When there is a pad, it serves the split instead of the max screen. That allows you to deal with oversized pads without going into transition.
Just let me.
could you like, I mean, it's phrase it, like riddle it to actually, you know, like a lack of a logic statement or something, but to actually make, I'm just thinking. As far as, I mean, I know we would put it on someplace that has a lot of pets, but would there be a way to say if there is a pet, do not wait?
Yeah, so instead of using the serve every other, even and odd, we probably start to use logic statements at that
Okay.
point to trigger calls conditionally, right? We'll get all the vehicle detection in, but we'll only call a phase under certain conditions.
There's some locations where I would really love to skip a side street, but
Yeah,
there, depending on the time of day, there might be a pet, you know, it's.
One of the
It
other
could be a
times,
liability, because
one
if
of the
somebody
other
just
times I've
crosses the
seen,
streets and they got skipped, they start crossing US 301, I'm in big trouble.
yeah, I've seen one where,
All seen
a
this?
customer,
I know.
a customer had a really heavy phase 4. And a fairly light phase 3.
Mhm.
Right, so they would skip phase 3 every other and then make 4 a fixed force off. So that the extra 3 time was given to 4 and they could flush that. But everything else is a floating force off. Any additional time goes to that quarter base, right? If you want to program a flashing yellow arrow, you're gonna come in here and you're just gonna hit, we have this view, which is like one overlap at a time. I also like the table view. If I wanted to put flashing yellow arrows all around, I would just do a flashing yellow arrow for section, included phase 2, and the left turn phase is 1. I can copy paste. So it makes programming really easy for 3, so on and so forth, right? Copy paste functionality exists everywhere. So let's just say you're gonna run phase plans by time of day. You want to have actuated rest off and walk on when you're running in cord, but you don't want actuated rest and walk on when you're running in free. Or you want to change your max screens by time of day. The copy paste functionality allows you to copy a whole table and paste it to another phase plan. Or you can do that with just a row, or you can do it with just a column. And what you'll notice is all those changes are sitting up here in pending. You can review them all, see what they are. Maybe I don't want this max 1 or this min green, but the rest of it I do want. Put in a comment. Save the changes.
Mhm.
On the controller, we track all those changes. So you go to your database management over here and we look at the database we're running. You'll see every change that was made, who made it, what time they made it, and any comments they might have put.
I do have one question of clarification that hopefully Joe can help me with, and do not tell the shop guys I said this. if we had a DDI and I forced them to put it on one cabinet, one controller with that sequencing, if I wanted to run it separately overnight, that would work, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Potentially. Okay, don't tell them.
Now, is there, is there an auto purge feature? Cause over the course of, 5, 7, 10 years, we don't want every database that's ever been stored, So is there a feature where we can say, hey, only store the last 12 months or only the last 2 years and purge
So-
everything?
On the controller, I usually suggest that you only have one database because your central system is backing it up all night.
Right.
Right? Now, if you're in a situation where you know you're gonna have something running temporarily, you may wanna make a copy and rename it temporary. And work with that. But typically, just have one database on the controller, maybe a couple factory templates that you can revert to if you've got a, replace a controller or something like that. And let the central system keep that audit trail of every single change. Is there an auto purge? No, but you can go in here and delete these whenever you want. And you can do this from the central, right? Because your controllers are all connected.
Okay. Just had a brain fart. I had another quick. Oh, can you show us where how to access the databases in the controller? Like say I have multiple. And the reason I'm asking is because say we are at an intersection under construction and they close, an entire leg of that intersection, eliminate left turns, we have to modify that database, but we want the other database on there for whenever that intersection reopens, then we can just, move it back over. I know we could grab it from the central system, but can you show me what you can grab it from inside the controller?
Yes, that's the menu I'm in right now. I'll re-navigate there. When I'm on my home screen, I go to Administration, Database Management. We have user databases, factory templates, and if you had a USB stick plugged into a controller, all the databases on your USB stick would show up there. I take my database that I'm working with, I hit copy, and I'm gonna change this to construction February 2024. All right, I can copy it. I can set that as active and then go make the edits in there. When I set it as active, it's the same thing I'm currently running, right? But then I can go make those changes and it's making it to that database instead, and that old one's still there. When that construction is over, you just click it and hit set as active, get back to normal. We can store quite a bit of databases on the controller, thousands, more than you have in the county.
Excellent. We also run multiple programs on the controller. So we have one deployment that we're running max CV, max time adaptive, one controller.
Yeah, that's in Fremont, California, and Orange County is also doing that, Florida here.
What are you guys' lead time is look like currently? So 7, 1, and 2.
For controllers,
Yeah.
how many do you want tomorrow?
Let's just throw a number out there. Two.
I just 200, I could ship them by the end of next week.
We took in an order at the end of November for North Carolina DOT for 600 controllers. 300 in December and 300 in January.
They mentioned that in their reference, response, so, yeah.
So we did a little bit different. We actually know we're gonna sell controllers, so we build them ahead.
Mhm.
So I just got off the phone with yesterday, have a month's worth ready to go whenever you want. So Whitney's team builds ahead for the sales team, so it's a great tool for us to be able to say, if someone calls and they need one tomorrow, we can actually get it out the door. And again, everything is built into Tucson, Arizona.
And because we're BABA, all of our boards are coming from the US, our models coming from the US as well.
Yeah.
And Will, to add to that, we are a stocking distributor as well, so we have
Yep.
inventory at times just here locally in Orlando. So
Okay.
usually can furnish up to certain smaller mid-size orders.
That was all of the questions that I had. I would ask our consulting team, is there anything you guys feel like we need to get clarification on or maybe expand on?
database comparison report.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see, I don't have the kinetic up that can show that. Do you mind pulling that one up and sharing your screen?
We went through database comparison. You're talking about like a daily report.
A weekly report.
Yeah.
Today.
Right now, that'd be third-party integration. It's working, we're working on it, right? It's on the roadmap.
It's on-
for database
to do it on
comparison. Yeah, comparison reports, but that's what we're doing into that third-party integration. You can just for, the Jasper, Power BI or Grafana. And we did price some of those report services for integrating that into the proposal.
Okay.
How about signal timing sheets? How many cases right now, electronic copies, are in database, signal timing sheet. So a consultant is looking to do a planning study. They sent them the timing sheets, assuming they can interpret what all that means on the timing sheet.
Yes, we have a share going up here. We're gonna go to the database, we're gonna look at our database. Now we'll go to
To build on the timing sheet. You guys go to feature.
It's in the database, system databases. Yeah.
And you, on a timing sheet, only show only the parameters that may be programmed or considered
system
very
data.
different from the default.
Yep.
So
So here's
I
the,
think you showed that feature a little bit earlier, but can you do that on a timing sheet?
here's the export, all right? So we can, here's our, what we can export it as, so we can just export this as a PDF. We have these 107 different parameters to include or exclude. So, just for completion, let's do all of them. Let's add all of them and let's do an export.
You notice he's got the high default values, right? So it's gonna hide the zeros and unused values because that's turned on.
That's what I.
Yep.
So it's gonna include all the menus, the entire menu structure, but if there's something in that menu that is still the default values and it has been programmed, it's not gonna include it on the timing sheet. That helps.
Open this guy up here.
Right.
Keep a little zoom in so you can see a little better. And there's your generated timing sheet here. And you probably wouldn't want to include all 107 parameters, but you can pick and choose. And there's also the option there to make a template of that and save that template. So if you have a particular, I know we used to do like the 2 styles, the shortened version and then the full lengthy version. So you can pick and choose through them and you create your short version and then, your longer version.
Is there any customization features, like can we import maybe the county logo so that's on all of our timing sheets when we print them out, anything like that?
We don't have that today, but it is something that we're looking at adding, but because you can export it and then you format, you can export it to Word.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
I don't know if we
Yeah.
necessarily need this, but would we ever need to, at some of our different designed intersections, I mean, doing it fine with DDI, would we ever need to change any of the parameters, like direction? I mean, do you think of any reason that we would actually need to change like the headers of anything? I don't know, I'm just throwing that out
Like
there.
having phase direction labels.
Or just add, completely changing the like what the category, defaults, for lack of better terms, you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of having this drop down, it's like north, south, east and west, like if we want to put like east to, like, I'm trying to think of anything that we would need that for. But
Max Time has a field in the phase configuration menu where you can put a description,
okay,
and that's totally customizable, and that gets included in the printout.
because technically in a DDI, you're eastbound again, but I'm eastbound north and then I'm eastbound south, so it's
Yeah.
like, it'd be nice to be able to.
Most
Oh,
people
it's not-
use that description field for that exact thing, so they'll say phase 1 is northbound left or southeast-ish.
I'm just trying to think of like, if you have a tech out there, making it as transparent as possible,
Yeah.
what is
What is
what,
what.
without them having to think.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a large intersection, they can't see everything.
You could also, just to get really crazy, you could export it to Excel and then pop in icons with little arrows. You'd actually a north, and then little north guy, but
Yeah.
How about detector labels?
detectors have labels, yeah, Max Time. Yep, you can put description fields onto your day plans, your phases, your detectors, your scheduler, your prioriters, your ramps,
Print on the timing sheet.
and those all print on the timing sheet.
Or we're what?
I have-
Minutes?
I have 6 minutes, so I have one story to tell about, it's a cool feature to have for a new tech. So one of Pete's counterparts on the West Coast, for the CT group on the West Coast, Joel, received a call at, I think it was 4 a.m. in the morning. They had a controller go out in a city that was 2 hours away from him. They had a brand new tech who'd never programmed a controller. Joel opened up the emulator, went to the front panel, walked the guy through the controller and set it up. So that instead of waiting 2 hours for Joel to show up, they had that back up in 25 minutes. So that is a unique feature with this, where if you have someone that has to go from the front panel, you can open the emulator, pull the front panel of the emulator up and walk them through step by
Press
step.
2, press 4. You're keeping like this, yeah.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes here. So one question, just yes or no, and then I'm gonna, run back to the committee and the management. Have you guys, or are you guys currently operating a DDI with your
Yes.
ATC control? Okay, easy enough. So in the last 5 minutes, I want to first open up to the other committee members. Do you guys have any additional questions that you want to ask? Consultant team, we got clarification, anything you guys think that we haven't covered? We're good. Management, leading involved, anything you guys want to add? Very good.
Okay.
Hey,
Awesome.
Will, can I steal a couple minutes?
Oh,
Yeah,
Just to
absolutely.
end? I just want to hit on a couple of things. I don't think we covered this, right? You can stick a USB stick in our controller, and you can set that to back up the current database on a 24-hour period, right? So in the event that you need to replace a controller in the middle of the night, pull the USB stick out. It's got the most current database on it. Put your new controller in, stick the USB stick in, make it active. You're good to go. With Cubic no longer manufacturing, right, their own MMU, everyone in the industry is now transitioned to the EDI, the MMU2. If you guys are familiar with it and you're familiar with ECCOM, we've support ECCOM or really built ECCOM into max time, right? So at any time we can see the status of your monitor. At the time of any time of a fault, right, we'll get what the monitor is reading and we'll get some of the logs. If you combined that, especially when you have a flash event and you're at the shop, if you combine that and what the monitor is telling you and what the fault type is, and then you combine that with our status replay and our ability to go back in time, you can see exactly what the controller was programmed to do as it was up until the fault, right? And you can compare that to what the MMU is showing you. So it should give you some insight before being dispatched to the actual site as to what potentially is your problem, so that you're just more prepared when you're out there. And then the last thing I'll kind of ask Whitney to talk on, just because you talked a little bit about FYA operation. I think this is a good one to end with, right? When we talk about some of the advanced functionality and we talk about how, our user logic can really open up a world of opportunity for you. So Whitney, if you wouldn't mind, how about describing what we're doing in Georgia that uses user logic, it uses peer-to-peer, and it uses your queue responsive, where we're measuring headway and ultimately flip-flopping back and forth between permissive, protected, and protected, enabling, disabling FYAs based upon the distance that we have between vehicles.
So, hold on, before you take off on that, because I'm sure you have a great spiel, just real quick. So Pete, were you pulling what the I got most, but I didn't get all of it. Were you pulling what the MMU is doing through its connection to the signal controller? To the signal controller or its own communication?
Anywhere on the network, if that monitor is anywhere on the network,
So it would have to be network based?
we can do serial or ethernet. So you can use a serial port if it's a serial base and connect it directly to the controller.
Okay.
Or you can use an ethernet, connect it to the controller or the switch.
And I noticed the XM control, is that the one you're offering? You have
Yeah.
4 ports, so can we use some of those ports to have
Yeah.
the device connected only to the controller because we don't want it on the network?
So this is what he's talking about. I can see in max time without having to launch ECCOM, I can see the AC log events, the monitor reset events, the previous failures, the channel events. You can pull this live or for previous. And when an intersection goes into flash, if your monitor is connected to max time, the flash alarm that you get from Kinetic actually lists the fault. So instead of just saying flash, it'll say flash dual indication. So you get that information. And you can customize your emails however you want to include that information as well. Now with what Pete was talking about, I would love to talk about user logic, except we added that as a feature. So we don't have to do it in user logic anymore.
Gap
Because we really liked it.
dependent FYA.
Gap dependent FYA. So GDOT implemented it 2 years ago. We programmed user logic that was hitting the detector hits to track how long the headway was. And it would disable that flashing yellow arrow if there wasn't enough headway. And now it's a standard feature in the overlaps gap dependent.
That's again, another one is cool. Someone didn't use the logic, cool feature, give it to everybody.
That it? Everybody good?
I'm good.
Okay. With that, this concludes our presentations today for Q3, and I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.